it is art, some of it is video. We've got all
Thank you,
kinds of
Ange.
stuff going on. Thank you, Ange. We've got all kinds of stuff going on that we got to look at here. So let's see here.
Oh, this journey into AI is just getting better and better.
Oh yeah, definitely good stuff. Let me see what we have. We were going to start with Canvas, I think, right? So let's see, Canvas from NVIDIA. And we have a video that I found over here on YouTube. And it was about an AI that draws, and it talks about drawing images with the speed of thought. And it has to do with scientific paper and all that. We're not going to get into the details of the paper per se, but there is a link right here to gauguin.org/gauguin2, which allows you to play with the software. The software that I downloaded is actually a beta release of Canvas by NVIDIA, and it was because I have an RTX card in my machine, I'm able to utilize it. If you don't have an RTX card, you wouldn't be able to use it locally, but you can go check out the demo and utilize the online resources to go into check out some of the features of it there. So I was checking out both really.
So they're really building this software to show off just how cool the RTX is.
Yeah, and it utilizes part of the reason it's able to draw so quickly is because of the fact that it can pinpoint a light source, and you don't have to manually draw all of the shadows and reflections and things like that. It just knows where things are in the scene. They all have that encoded into them, and then you can change the scene at a whim. And that's why with the way the software works, you can just kind of change a style by selecting a different image. So in this image, it's a sunset with the sun low on the horizon on the left, and with another image, the sun is behind you on the right. And each one would generate a very different scene based on the same very basic input, where we don't have to feed it much of anything at all. We can just give it some very basic parameters to work with, essentially, or a quick sketch even that looks, even more basic than like a kindergartner drawing, just to feed to the AI and tell it, look, I want, rocks over here, and I want flowers over there, and I want, this over here, like telling things where they should be and having it look from there. So that's one thing that we can definitely look at. The
Yeah,
question is,
what I'm amazed by so far from what I've seen is just how simple the drawing is to accomplish very complex pictures.
mm-hmm,
You don't have to be a great artist.
yep,
You
yep,
just have to have vision.
exactly. Pretty crazy. And so some of the stuff that we were looking at, let's just play the video for now, and it's a quick little 5-minute video, and it'll give us kind of an introduction to how it works, and you can kind of see them utilizing it in real time. Again, this was from NVIDIA's new AI, and this is an article from 2 Minute Papers, is where I got it there. So let's go check it out. Let me know if the volume's okay.
Here. Welcome to episode 600, and today you will see your own drawings come to life as beautiful photorealistic images. And
It really
it
does
turns
draw that
out
fast, which
you
is
can
crazy.
try it too. I'll tell you about it in a moment. This technique is called Gauguin 2, and yes, this is really happening. In goes a rough drawing and out comes an image of this quality. That is incredible. But here there is something that is even more incredible. What is it? Well, drawing is an iterative process. But once we are committed to an idea, we need to refine it over and over, which takes quite a bit of time, and let's be honest here, sometimes things come out differently than we may have imagined. But this is different. Here you can change things as quickly as you can think of the change. You can even request a bunch of variations on the same theme and get them right away. But that's not all, not even close. Get this, with this you can draw even without drawing. Yes, really. How is that even possible? Well, if we don't feel like drawing, instead we can just type what we wish to see, and my
text-to-image
goodness,
stuff is
it
incredible.
not only generates
Really?
these images according to the written description, but this description can get pretty elaborate.
Now,
For
you didn't
instance,
show
you
me
can get
that.
open
I
waves.
know.
That's great. But now let's add some rocks. And a beach too. And there we go. We can also
Wow.
use an image as a starting point, then just delete the undesirable parts and have it inpainted by the algorithm. Now, okay, this is nothing new. Computer graphics researchers were able to do this for more than 10 years now, but hold on to your papers because they couldn't do this. yes, we can fill in these gaps with a written description.
Northern Lights.
Couldn't witness the Northern Lights in person? No worries, here you go. And wait a second, did you see that? There are two really cool things to see here. Thing number one, it even redraws the reflections on the water,
That's the key.
even
That's the
if we
RTX
haven't highlighted that part for inpainting. We don't need to say anything, and it will update the whole environment to reflect the new changes by itself. That is amazing.
And that
Now,
used to take
I am a
so
licensed
much time.
illustrator by trade,
Exactly.
and this makes me very, very happy. Thing number two,
Me too.
I don't know if you caught this, but this is so fast, it doesn't even wait for your full request. It updates after every single keystroke.
Every keystroke.
Drawing is an inherently iterative process, and iterating with this is an absolute breeze. Not will be a breeze, it is a breeze. Now, after nearly every 2-minute papers episode where we showcase an amazing paper, I get a question saying something like, okay, but when do I get to see or use this in the real world? And rightfully so,
How about
Now.
that is a good question. Previous Dragon paper was published in 2019, and here we are, just a bit more than 2 years later, and it has been transferred into a real product.
I'm seeing a
Not only
theme
that,
around
but
2019 in
this
AI.
is a great
We,
deal.
we hit a AI
What it was
stride in
before,
2019.
yes, the new version
they've been
also
refining it nicely.
supports more materials. And we are at the point where this is finally not just a cool demo, but a tool that is useful for real artists. What a time to be alive! Now, I noted earlier, I did not say that iterating with this will be a breeze, but it is a breeze. Why? Well, great news, because you can try it right now in two different ways. One, it is now part of a desktop application called NVIDIA Canvas. With this, you can even export the layers to Photoshop and continue your work
That's
there.
key right there.
This will require
That's a big
relatively
key.
recent NVIDIA graphics card.
NVIDIA
And
RTX
two,
card.
there is a web app too that you can try right now. The link is available in the video description, and if you try it, please scroll down and make sure to read the instructions and watch the tutorial video to not get lost. And remember, all this tech transfer from paper to product took place in a matter of 2 years. Bravo, NVIDIA! The pace of progress in AI research is absolutely amazing. This episode has been supported by Cohere AI. Cohere builds large language models and makes them available through an API so businesses
That's what they're using?
enhance language understanding to their system or app quickly with just one line of code. You can use your own data, whether it's text from customer service requests, legal contracts, or social media posts, to create your own custom models to understand text or even generate it. For instance, it can be used to automatically determine whether your messages are about your business hours, returns, or shipping. Or it can be used to generate a list of possible sentences you can use for your product descriptions. Make sure to go to cohere.ai/papers or click the link in the video description and give it a try today.
Yeah, there's just some crazy stuff with all of that. And again, some of it was Gauguin too, was the one that he just used right there. And Cohere, that cohere.ai/papers is the one that has the AI engine there. That one I started looking into more also, and it looks like that's more, not more generalized, but has a ton of case-specific AI cases already built out. That like he was saying, like if you wanted it to generate a product tagline, or you can just ask it something in English, like say, write me a jingle for chewing gum or whatever, and it'll just come up with something relevant because
And I bet you the reason why you've seen such rapid AI development in the last couple of years is because of an engine like that, being able to put keywords in and translate with basic English into image, music. That engine is a key to other AIs.
Indeed. Now with the setup that we had here, this is the one that he was talking about, Gauguin.org. This is the one that anybody can just go to the webpage and utilize. You just have to check the box at the bottom to agree to the conditions and start using it. You You can use it to draw all of these things, just like he
And
was with
this
the
is right in
sketches.
the browser, no installation necessary.
Right in the browser, no installation. Instead of even doing the writing in or the drawing in, we were going to go with the input text. This is what he was looking at before, so we could just type in whatever, like tulip
Tulip
fields.
fields on a sunny day with wind.
There
That's
you go.
pretty specific.
Pretty specific, right? And then we say, let's see what that looks like, and it might be taking into account what I drew already. So we'll see if it kind of tries to meld the two, or if it just goes with the one. But in general, once you feed it, you have to tell it that you want to feed it the text also. That's probably why that didn't go there. But then it starts trying to do something, and again, you can change the different styles for each and see what it changes to. At this point, it doesn't have enough to go on, so we have to give
Now,
it some
you've
landscape
used
stuff.
Canvas
Mm-hmm.
for a while now today.
Today, yep.
Compared in speed, what
Mm-hmm.
you see here versus there, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine Canvas is just blowing
Faster.
this out of the water.
Big time. Yeah, it's so much faster. I mean, it's actually open right here as well. With this one, as I was, for example, drawing a tree, if I wanted to just, all I have in this image so far is just sky and flowers in the front. But if I wanted to draw a tree and just kind of make it like, this is just with the mouse, so just kind of crazy tree like that. I mean, that shouldn't turn into anything cool at all, but it's actually
Turned
cool.
it into a flower.
Yep, a flowering tree like that. And that's because of this whole section here for styles. Now, when I installed this, they give you 7 or 8 styles, I think it was, these top 7 or 8 styles. So you could see it would have turned out like this. And just by changing each style, you'll see how the little style thumbnails I'm hitting change the overall feel of the whole image, because it's using
Oh,
that
and
palette
look at the lighting effect
and the lighting
as it
effects.
goes. Yeah, now it's got some like backlighting.
And that's part of the RTX. And now you're at nighttime, but you're still kind of lit, because that's
Oh,
a nighttime image. And again, these are the 8 demos they give you. So you can just switch back and forth between each of these styles. But the great part is that there's also a button that says new style right here, and you can just go feed it any JPEG and use those images. So I started feeding it the ones that I had as just wallpaper background images, or stuff that I generated from the other AI program, or pictures that I took myself, just anything that I had either an interesting light
so
source
when you
or
import those
subject.
images, they show up as a new style, basically.
Yes, and the key part is that your image will automatically be formatted to work with Canvas. So it automatically, essentially, RTXs
That's
the
nice.
image that you feed it. It
Yeah,
breaks it down, figures out
a
what it
lot
should
of these
do.
programs can be a lot of these programs can be specific about what they want in image size, or auto formatting makes it a lot easier than somebody having to go prepare their image ahead of time,
Yeah.
making it the right size or the right composition.
hmm And you can see how drastically this changes everything just by, all I'm doing is clicking through the different styles that I fed it to go with. These are just images that, again, had color palettes that I found interesting, or subject matter that I wanted to try to replicate. It doesn't really have much with buildings and such. So, like, I had a shot that was, downtown Paris, for example, but that's not going to translate over. It's more just the color palette and the density of what's going on that it's going to pick from there. But you
See,
get some
these
different
kind of
interesting
style
results.
changes, to do this in the old days, like say in Photoshop,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to run a whole bunch of filters across multiple layers to accomplish the same thing. It could take you hours to make that change, and
Yep.
you're doing it in a click.
In a click. And again, I don't even have to. I mean, it can be generated from words, like we said before, or we can generate these from just clicking in here. But the main thing was how easy it
Ooh,
is to
that
draw things.
pastel one's nice.
This one or the one before?
This one right here, that's a
This one. So let's go with this one then. And so as far as the materials up here, right, we have air, or sky. We have clouds. We have hills, mountains, water, dirt, fog. That's another good one. Fog. You got
See, I
snow.
would put fire behind that.
Now
Make
fire we
those
don't have in here,
clouds fiery.
but I do have a fiery palette like that. And if I went with that and put a lot of clouds, let's say, so for the clouds, if I drew them in and just said it's like really overcast and lots of clouds, and again, just kind of putting them all over the place here, and you see that it kind of tries to fill in all that stuff as clouds. But if we go to different styles, you'd see it would fill them in differently, where the whole sky, some of them will have the whole sky will be filled. Some of it will try to more closely mimic what I drew. But again, I just kind of sloppily
And,
threw it all up
and a
over
key there is your color choices. Like,
there.
I notice your clouds are different color than everything else, so now it's focusing on that color and saying, I'm going to render something like clouds.
Yep. And what they use these colors up here are they stay. So anytime there's going to be clouds, they're always going to look that gray color. Anytime there's flowers, they're going to be that purple color. So that's the key. But the other thing that we talked about was that you can export right to Photoshop, and part of that is because you have the layers. So everything is on its own layer. So I could say if I don't want to look at those flowers at the bottom, I can just turn that layer off, and now we just have a floating tree with the clouds. So it doesn't make sense to turn that layer off necessarily, but you can see what you can change just by having everything on its own layer. We could sit here and have everything pop in and out like that. Some of them I fed in as fractals, so that I had the fractal color palettes to work with. Others I had.
Oh, some of those style choices are like this is useful for those looking for like that album cover.
Yes.
Um, Again, another way of making album covers without stepping on copyrights and
Mm-hmm.
using somebody else's image.
Yep.
Kind of conceptualize it and build it yourself.
As a
You don't
demonstration,
have to have massive graphic art skills to do this.
they do give us three CAN files. They basically, since it's a canvas, they call them .can files. They did three as templates or examples for you, and they had those first 8 styles. So this is basically the way they drew it, and it kind of gives you an introduction to how they're breaking out the layers too, where you can see that they have, the ground is one thing, and then they have these little sawgrass or whatever you want to call that there. You got the water in the background, you've got the mountain in the background, and you got the clouds in the sky. And just with those keys right there, again, you can turn, if you want to make it a clear sky, you can just hide that layer, and it becomes a clear sky immediately. If you want to take out the water and make it so that it's all a dry place, you can just get rid of the water, and now it's middle of a desert.
I
And then
love how
the
they
terrain doesn't
incorporated
change.
layers like that.
And you can turn off the vegetation, so it's more just the sand. Or you can say, too much hills in the back, so we can say flatten it out, and just boom. Just literally with one click, you're able to do all these things. You can also change the order of the layers. So like we took the ground out of the front, but the water was still there, so it kind of filled in or assumed that there's water in this area, which is pretty cool. And again, this is just the first style, and then just by changing to the different styles, it'll change the lighting. It'll make it so that it appears like a completely different scene. You can do the nighttime scene, so you get that. Sometimes you'll actually have the sun coming straight through the mountain, or like coming in from the sides. It's just very cool, like all the different things that just can change in a heartbeat with, by switching one little thing, and the fact that you can draw so easily on each of those little layers to make, all these different things come around. And the different style choices, just by adding new images, I can just get completely different color palettes, ones that weren't even possible before, like by using the ones from these fractals. That was definitely not a natural color, but it looks perfect there. I mean, it's got that whole sunset glow coming out of those clouds over there. This one's
Wait
much
till
more.
you see this engine merge with some of the other image AIs that we've looked at. When
Yep.
they all start to work together.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I'm doing here as well, where some of these images that I fed into it are ones that I generated from the AI program that we talked about last week. Was it last week or the week before?
And you
Previously.
could feed this into that
Yep, I can feed
generator
both
over
ways.
there.
I can feed
Yeah,
these into that, and I can feed those into this to edit them and make them make
there's
changes
a
really
lot of
quick.
possibility.
Now with this one, they give us 3 of those images. One is also a lush marsh that they went with, so that one is.
Yeah, and look at the examples that they're giving you there. I mean, these are good starting points to understand like the usefulness of this engine.
And you can see up to 18 layers. I mean, there's not 18 active layers, but you can see that they made 18 layers over time. Like they took out layers 2, 3, 4, 5. But that was probably just in the way it numbers layers and keeps the numbers going up sequentially like that. You get rid of the layers, they'll keep the numbers the way they were, so it doesn't get confusing. But
And
just
by being able to see what they do on the left side with these templates, it gives you ideas of what you could scribble on the left side.
exactly. And the fact that it is very basic in terms of you don't need to be fancy. Like you have brush sizes that can be very, very small. Like they made the little dots in here for the little vegetation, and those little lines for the bushes in the side there inside that bank. Or you can go with the thicker ones like they did with the clouds, where it just for the stride.
There's little sprinkles of rocks inside of
Mm-hmm.
water.
Yep, exactly. And then again, by changing the scene, it completely changes the tone and everything about the image. You get the night skies one. I really like the ones with the night sky because some of them just have really good. That was the one that they gave us, and then this is one that I added. So they're both a little bit different, but they do have that whole very dark look to them, but also very nice with the sky. And I just kind of pick a couple of random ones just to get an idea of which ones are which.
Yeah, you could play with this all night.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
I mean, I would fill up that style palette with a zillion ideas.
Yep. And with any of these, like we were talking about before, as soon as you want to export it, it exports as a PSD file, so you're going right to Photoshop. So it's exactly what you want it to be. Getting your layers, keeping them separate, keeping it so that you can then work with it in Photoshop and then bring it back here and do other things with it, or either way. But when you're actually just trying to draw in real time, it's kind of crazy that it's able to change as fast as it is. And so if you get like a well lit one somewhere where you can just kind of see what's more going on, and then just pick something like, let's see, how about
See, this
put a
is really
forest
impressive for
in? Mm-hmm.
terrain generation. I mentioned to you earlier about Bryce.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
old days with 3D, Bryce was the program that was a terrain generator, and its purpose was to define a ground, define rocks, define water, and it did it in 3D, but it took forever to actually make scenes like this, and they weren't even as realistic. I mean, this is insane how fast.
And all I
And
did right there was just drew with some gravel, and it literally put all that little mountain and hillside all up in there.
it looks very realistic.
And I was drawing on the actual image instead of on the sketch, just to make it so that, like, I'm saying, oh, I want this river to be wider. I can just grab the river here, or that's sea, but sea or river, and just kind of push from here and say I want more water, and have it like push back the other stuff that's there.
Another thing that's really cool is it keeps depth of field in perspective. Like some of the samples you showed me earlier,
Mm-hmm.
there were some where the depth of field was really strong. I think maybe the style that you used
Mm-hmm.
forced it to like have a nice sharp front, and then the depth of field really went blurry as it went backwards. With these layers the way they are, um, that's a cool natural effect.
And in this case, I was
I
drawing
mean,
on the very
look
bottom
look
layer,
as
so I
it
had to move
blurs
it to the
going
front.
into the back.
I had to pull that layer to the front to get the water that I just drew in, which I basically scribbled all over the image, but pulled that to the front just to get it so that it's more active than everything else. But if I started moving it back in the image, you would start to see it, drop further back behind other things as you move layers around, which is also just very cool. But again, there's all the demos that they have, and then beyond the ones that they give you, the other one was the snow fog. That was a good example from the fact that if you're using the right style, like a style that has a good contrast between the snow and mountains and all that, then it looks like this, where you got the fog going there and the mountains kind of jutting up out of the fog. Very cool. But if you used one that's a totally wrong color palette, then you wind up with these floating mountains because like the sunlight's coming like right through where that mountain should be. So it doesn't always work out like that. The AI can make mistakes when it's trying to figure some of this stuff out.
That's see with that depth of field on that one before,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
like how oh wow, that's like on the moon.
Mm-hmm. Get right up and close to the seashells there in the foreground. And that's the thing, is like that could totally change too if you started doing other things with it. But the fact that we did little dots of vegetation in the front here is it's just trying to make these little things. And if you go to one that has more of a snowy look, you get it all black and white. You get like almost that Ansel Adams look on it there.
Tell me you don't see some album covers here.
I see tons of them with this and
Yeah.
with the other art programs that we're going to talk about in a little while also. And that's what's crazy about it, is all of this stuff. We could sit here just like our buddy Bob Ross there with making the happy little trees. I can make happy little trees all day in here. And in fact, we'll make one in his honor right now. We'll just go up here and select a forest. And
We're gonna draw a tree.
we're going to draw ourselves a happy little tree. We're just going to go, I'm going to put him right, not quite in the middle, but kind of over to the side here. We're just going to go straight up. I'm on the wrong layer, so it's going to be behind something. We're going to make it like a big fluffy tree. How about that? Big happy tree.
So above the styles, what's in the top right corner there? Those are objects.
Those are materials to work with. Yep. And like in this case, that's a tree. It's not a very good tree.
So I see like a snowflake. I
Yep.
see the
Snowflake would be snow.
clouds.
Yep. Clouds. As we go through them, there's hills, there's mountains, there's water, rivers, and seas are three different things, but you could use them, all
And I'm
essentially.
sure as they develop the software, that palette's going to grow tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Let me just bring my happy little tree to the front there, and then we got a happy little tree in the front. Because I brought the water and the tree up to the front. I mean, he's kind of an ugly little tree. I'll give him that. But,
Well, he looks like
he's
a
got
cold
character.
tree in this picture.
He's got character. But then, of course, if we change the scene and say, oh, now he's at the beach. He lives at the beach. And then, oh, and now he's in the snow again. And then, oh, just all kinds of, because again, we're not changing much, or I should say that the scene isn't that complex at this point. All it is, a foreground, a background, and some water that we put up in there. So just kind of going through
See,
different options.
you too, under the Joshua tree. There's
Exactly.
a cover.
Yep, right there. Exactly. And again, that would be just taking
Without
this
having to go
into
film that one rare tree.
yep. And it, to be the other thing that we could do even is if we just came over here to Gaugan, when we were looking at that, instead of the tulip fields and the windmills, what if we told it, sitting under a Joshua tree, drinking lemonade? How about that? And we'll see if it can figure out. Oh, check this box.
I'm curious how it's going to incorporate lemonade into that.
Exactly. We'll see if. Oh, gotta tell it we're using text. Still learning the tools. I only started using this today, so.
Oh, you have to specify to the engine to follow the input text.
Yeah, you're kind of telling it what you want to use. So I'm trying to tell it to use this text, and you have to tell it that you want to use not the segmentation map, but we're going to try to use the sketch map and text for that, and go. All right, it could be that we don't have anything yet. We have to draw a little bit, I'm thinking, to give it something to go on. So let's try giving it some hills, like draw something over there, and one over here, and then maybe fill
Oh,
in.
you're specifying things over there. Each one of those you're selecting, it changes the color for you, lets you
Yeah.
scribble.
Yep, this would be a mountain.
That's intuitive.
Yep, and then for a river over here, it would be this way. And again, this is just kind of, random whatever, trying to figure if we can get it to generate.
Oh, it looks like a big middle finger.
It does. I figured I'd stop before I got crazy into whatever I'm getting here. Let's see here. Input, utilization. Yeah. So anyway, this is all trying to go from the Gauguin there, which I haven't done that much with yet. So it looks like I'm not getting what I'm expecting there. But if we do some fills,
I'm kind of curious
try
about
to fill.
their name for the engine, Gauguin. Is that
Mhm.
is Gau for Gaussian?
I'm not sure. I didn't
I,
actually read
I
that
wouldn't
part
be
into the paper.
surprised because
It is a
it's all
beta. This
about
is still.
blurring. It's all about blurring the lines, and that's what Gaussian blurs do.
And they do go right through a tutorial where they tell you got to come down here and click this, and then they want you to start drawing specific things so that you can walk through the different tools and type in specific things up here so that you can walk through it like that. So in this case, I already went through the tutorial the one time, but I'm just going to skip out of there. But again, this is the one way to do it. The other way that I was more familiar with was with Canvas. And again, this is where we can draw this way. I wasn't doing as much with the text input over here, which is definitely interesting when I saw that option. That was very cool.
Well, I like the
With
speed
Gauguin.
and the
The
response
speed on
with
this is
Canvas.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Makes me want an RTX card. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a compelling reason to buy a modern 3D card. Games
Rocks over here,
don't
rocks
compel
over
me
here.
to spend $300-400 on a video card, but this
Put
worth
some
it.
rocks in. Yeah. If you wanted to build a rock wall, you got a rock wall over here and make it a little bit bigger like that. And just say, hey, let's block out a whole section over here and put in a wall.
And eventually, I expect you'll see this get incorporated into game development.
Mm-hmm.
More people will start to be able to build their worlds in game. It's like the Minecraft effect.
Mm-hmm.
If tomorrow's kids are building their virtual world with tools like this,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to run with it. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And that was the thing is Minecraft also does take advantage of the RTX cards, and that was a consideration. Seeing the level of jump of graphic density, graphic complexity, and how it's just so lightweight because of the fact that you're not doing all that rendering, you're not doing all that calculation. Is like we were talking
Well, it's
about
been
reflections.
offloaded. It's been offloaded to a chip on the NVIDIA card.
Yep.
The RTX, they put a lot of thought into what do you need your dedicated card to focus on rather than the CPU or the GPU for that matter.
Yeah. in this case, if you see the image on the left here, that's all I had to draw. Was I just drew like a little hillside across, filled it in at the bottom, and then drew one tree. And you get all the different, since they're on separate layers, you can turn the tree on or off and have it just completely out of the picture.
And then establish a visual style, a pattern style. Yeah.
Yep. And like this one is from some of the artwork that I generated in the other AI program, so it's a different otherworldly palette, a weird colored tree. Or you go with the green one, or we can
Again, these are album covers, grunge album covers.
Yep. Or you can turn it into snowlands. And, I like the fact that like this one has no leaves on it, so it's the same shape of the tree, general structure. It's just more with the branches and almost that Ansel Adams kind of look to it. Or you go farmland. I mean, just so many options. And again, this is just a very basic scene, just a couple of things. But again, I could spend all night going over this. But we had other things that we were looking at with AI as well. And one of them.
We will be playing more with this.
Yes, we will.
I want an RTX card now.
Yep. And,
more than ever.
Even without the RTX card, this is from one of the Google collabs, the one that we talked about a few weeks ago or last week. Was same guy did another YouTube video on this other art program, and this is the one that's running in the background right now, where we just fed it a couple of words. Like in this case, we told
that's the one you set up before the show, huh? Wow.
Yep. I told it to do circuit board Grand Canyon was the keywords I gave it, so it's going to use circuit board colors and kind of Grand Canyon-ish look.
I love how it interpreted that.
What's cool also is that it's literally just finishing. It's at step 675 of 700, so it's got one more image to give us, and then it's going to start doing the video part for us, because it automatically generates a video from it.
That really did put some time into the thought, because, I mean, you started that like a little over an hour ago.
Yep, 1 hour and 27 seconds. Keeps the estimated time at the bottom, or the execution time, I should say, at the bottom. So it took just about an hour to generate that, and that's... because when I was using it before, we were only essentially doing one quadrant. We were doing one of these 4 images at a time, so it was able to generate a lot faster. But in this case, we took 4 at a time, so we're doing 4 images that are all 512 by 512 at a time, and using the same keywords to generate them, so that you get 4 completely random different iterations of the same idea, because one might be a lot cooler than another one, or the one that you specified and waited a half an hour for it to finish might not come out the way you wanted it to. But if it does 4 at a time, and then at the end it just gives you, here's the 4 individual ones, and then it starts generating the video for you. So the 4 individual images would be these 4 last ones here. This one has much more. You can see at the top, the sky up above there, very cool, and like a lake at the bottom. And then it's almost like lava fields, but of an unknown otherworldly material. And this one has more like the green to it, so it almost like copper that got weathered is what this one kind of reminds me of. But it also has the terrain at the top there, and just a little bit of sky. And this one's more like a river, like a volcanic river of green and whatever.
See, now I would love to get layers of that. Mm-hmm. All those different colors and rock layers would be awesome to go into Photoshop and do some playing with the chroma keys and...
Indeed. This last one doesn't have quite as much sky, or it's dark up at the top there, but again, same idea, and just the complexity that was generated in, this is an hour of kind of leaving it to do its own thing. I didn't have to do anything for it other than feed it some initial conditions, but when it finishes generating that video, we'll come back to it and check that out, because that'll show us the time lapse of going from a blank screen to those 4 images, so you'll see
I can't wait to see what that's going to look like in a video.
That's going to be pretty cool. And again, that was from this guy, which is the AI Whisperer, and the Google collab that I'm using right there. The link is right here on this video. So if you go to the AI Whisperer, you'll find him. This one was called The Most Powerful Art Generator You Need to Learn Right Now. And this video came out, we were just talking about it. It's gotten 5,000 views and it came out today. So it's came out a few hours ago, but this is the same guy who we watched the video from last week, and that one had been out for a few weeks. But this was fresh, just came out, new Google collab that they're using. He also has a link to the Reddit that they use for the generators, for the people who are generating digital art. And they have another academy course, I guess, at Udemy for becoming a master generative artist. So some good stuff that he's got on his page here.
Yeah, I'm a fan now. From the first time you showed me him, definitely very cool dude. His energy and enthusiasm for this technology, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, just starts right in like that, right? I don't have the sound on, but he was definitely very high energy guy when he's doing his.
What's going on, beautiful people of the interwebs? I'm the AI Whisperer, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to use the most powerful art generator out there in the world right now.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is a very important month when it comes to the art generation community, and maybe not for the reasons that you may think, because... It was Clip's birthday a year ago! Woo! Clip turned 1 year old this month. Woo! Let's go! Alright, now we all know the incredible Catherine Croson, who's developed the amazing VQN and Clip art generator. Go follow her on Twitter. Now, she's back at it again with another very powerful art generator that's capable of doing many different things, like
So we don't have to watch the whole video of it, but that's where you'll go to get it, and that's where you got the link to the collab. Once you're in the collab, once you utilize it, you can make things like this one. This is going to generate for a little while longer. But one of the other things that we were working on was music AI generation. So that's one that we needed to talk about.
After this image AI, music AI is progressing at a rapid pace.
And so we started
just a little bit you've shown me so far in the last couple of weeks. I can't believe they've gotten that far, but what you showed me tonight with the orb really
Orb Composer.
is some advanced AI.
Yeah. So this is something that we were working on in Cakewalk, and let me bring that back over here. But we have, I basically went into the project and made.
And this AI works in any DAW because it's a VST plugin. You can incorporate this music AI into any workflow that you're working with, even BandLab. I mean, this is generating MIDI.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you can't load a VST into the BandLab editor, but you could go to Cakewalk, generate this, bring the MIDI into the BandLab editor, and you're good to go.
Yep, and that's exactly what I did, as a matter of fact. So I have this one in Cakewalk here, but I also pushed it to BandLab and made a project of it myself after I did just the first 3 sections of it, so we could see what it looks like over there too. But for this part, this was from in here, the actual interface, the actual VST. Again, I have on the wrong screens because I was working on it over there before. So I'll bring it back over here. But this is Orb Chords. This is part of it. The Orb Master at the top here has the progressions that I gave. I used we talked previously about the Unison chord pack, and that's what I was using to feed the different progressions, because when you come to the different sections in here, I basically set up a theme 1, theme 2, theme 3, theme 4. You can set up intro or outro or a bridge or a chorus. You can set up as different themes. You can set up how you want it. You can set the intensity at the bottom. You'd recognize some of these things from putting in MIDI stuff in the past, how these MIDIs look like this. When you actually play the sections, this is what I came up with earlier today. Let me know if the volume's okay.
See, and you utilizing the chord pack in this case, for those out there who say, I can't play an instrument and I'm not that kind of musician, with the chord packs and things like that, with stuff like this, there really is no excuse anymore. It doesn't matter if you can play a certain instrument or not. You can construct complex music just by understanding basic things about music, like a C chord, A minor, a G, a C. These chords, you don't need to know how to play them to tell this machine to use them.
Yep, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't play a single note to make the song that we're going to listen to in a minute here, but I just made a new section so that you can see right here in the top right, it has a section for drag your MIDI file here or browse. So you can just browse into there, and again, my screen's over there, but this is where I had I went into the section of the Unison MIDI chord pack, which is for C major and A minor, as Tony mentioned. So this has the 4 chord progressions, or the basic progressions with the diatonic triads for majors. And just by looking at the numbers here, like you may have heard somebody talking about a 1 6 4 5 progression or what have you. Like these is using those numbering systems. So it's using the Nashville numbering system that they would call it. And you can see all the different progressions that are here. So I picked a couple that were a little bit different than what I usually would do. So like I took major progression 3, which is going from a 1, minor 3, minor 6, 1, major 4, 1, V sus.
And I bet you anybody out there, whether they have music theory knowledge or not, could listen to these progressions and understand what a 1 5 6 or a 1 4 5 is in music, because once you listen to the progression, just the example, you'd be like, oh, that's this song, that's that song,
Exactly.
that's like 100 songs that you probably heard in the last 20 years.
Yep.
Just
And
one of these progressions.
major progression 10 would be one that I guarantee is like that, because that's going from the
Yeah,
5 to the 4 to the
5
6 to the 1.
4 6 1.
So let's pick that
Pop,
one just
rock.
for now, and we're going to say that it's just chords, and it's a major progression. We have it in C, and it's in C major. But right at this point, if we wanted to change the time signature or how many bars it is, like I could say that it's going to be 8 bars instead.
Yeah, I
And that's
can't
fine.
believe the
C major.
flexibility they give you with the bars and the time too.
And tell it to harmonize, and it just comes up with this section on its own. And as far as it's concerned, it would be like this. Let me know if the volume's good. Right, so that's definitely a different progression there. We were in theme 5, major progression.
And you could
This one's going
totally
G,
use
F,
that
A
in
minor,
like
C.
Flash Gordon.
Yep. And then it changed up halfway through. It goes G, F, A minor, C, and then it goes C, G, B diminished. So it actually goes up to that 7 over there. So I wasn't expecting
It's really
that.
cool how it shows the chords at the top too along the
Yep.
way.
Yep.
You know, even if you just want to practice on top of something like this, being able to see what would be even better is if I could see those in, say, guitar tab or bass tab.
Yeah. Now what we can do is tell it for this part here. Right. This will tell us that it doesn't have to, or it can use more than one chord per bar. Because right now it's just doing, keeping it as one chord per bar. If we tell it to do this, it'll actually enable it to break the chords
Wow.
up, and it gives it more flexibility, and it kind of randomized itself as well. So now that same progression that we just listened to would sound like this. And you can see at the bottom,
It
that's
really
all.
makes the steps more progressive along the way.
Yep, and it breaks it up a little bit. Now we can also change. There's settings over here for density and complexity and how long the bars are, and there's so much that you can do individually to different things to change them. You can add sevenths, ninths,
Yeah,
11ths,
I can't
13ths, all
believe
that
the
stuff.
deck with that right there. I can't believe the density and the complexity are down at 0.
Yeah, I think it's because we didn't actually tell it to do the orb yet. This was so far just telling it to harmonize on that section. So now if I say orb, it's going to randomize everything. And so here's a completely
Interesting.
random rethinking of that same song in that same
Whoa.
progression, completely different.
And it jacked the holy shit.
Quite a difference. Now let's say you
It
like that
gave it the
part,
bounce. It
and
gave it the groove, like the dun, 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 dun. Imagine changing that to some distorted guitar, and all of a sudden, that is metal.
and as a matter of fact, we're using energetic right now for the chords. But if you look at, they have tons of presets of what we could choose. Some of them are things like rhythm guitar, for example. We can see how that sounds like.
And these are basically like moods. What
Yep.
these are
Some are
different
moods, some
chord
are
approaches,
instrumentation, but
different bouncing.
they'll usually try to give you both. Some information about the instruments that are being used and the mood that it's trying to utilize for it. But let's see if Ready Rhythm sounds like.
Very cool.
And then some people might say, well, that's all fine and good. You made that in here, but then how are you gonna get it to your DAW? Well, all you need to do is make space for it, really, and just drag it in, because they've made it that easy.
Yeah,
You can just,
and now each one of those tracks, if I want track 2 to be a distorted guitar or a distorted bass for that particular part, it's just about assigning an instrument.
for this case, I can just take this part that it generated. It'll take that whole MIDI piece that we just did, and I can just drag it up into that spot and tell it to go into the DAW. And now it's in there, and I can just slap it to the end of what we had over here.
Now,
and it's there.
here's one cool thing with Cakewalk. If you want that to play for a couple of bars, if you right click over that clip and you turn groove looping on,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to drag that and stretch it. And yeah, groove clip looping. Once you do that, see how it's round now?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can stretch that and that progression will play over and over.
Yep.
And that is really powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we can do is also tell it to loop that section if we wanted to, where we can tell it to go from here to here, and just tell it, like right now it's looping over in here, the section with the yellow, and we can tell it instead to come out to here and loop a section of it that way as well. So two different ways that we can get it to loop just that section if we wanted to. But
And if you were adding some guitar tracks or something yourself on top of it, now you'd be ready to actually like hit record
yep,
and it'll just focus on this little section and you can just riff away until you're happy.
yep.
And it'll just keep playing it over and over.
Now the instrumentation I think changed when we came here. I think it's using a piano at this stage, but let's see.
For this track. I like the hits it's doing.
It's a nice clean loop, just like you said. The fact that we set it up as a loopable clip, now it's just we can stretch that as long as we want it to be. That's that entire section of the song. And again, that was the chord portion of the Orb Composer. And there are 4 VSTs that come with the Orb Composer, and they are the Orb Chords, Orb Bass, Orb Arpeggios, and Orb Melody. And
Really? That's how they break them up?
Yep, that's how they break them up. So each one, like this one, would be the Orb Bass, and you can see it gives you the different
And,
color.
and I can see why they would need separate types of AI for those types of approaches. Arpeggio
Yeah.
AI would be very different than chord AI.
Exactly. And the fact that you can, with those 4, you pretty much cover all the bases because you have chords and you have bass separately. So you could do, bass and chords separately. You got the arpeggios, so you can do that separately. And the melody is, of course, going to have to be in there. With all of them, you can also tweak them however you like. With the bottom over here, you're seeing the intensity of the notes, the MIDI velocity. So you can just draw a curve on that. Like if you wanted it to become a less intense performance and then more intense later on, you can do that sort of thing and get get more emotional swells happening in the music. But for this is the bass line that it was generating. Let's go to the beginning. I actually did kind of random ones for each of the different themes. So we'll see what.
I really like how they tabbed the themes out like that.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah,
browser-like.
yeah.
This interface is very intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I already understand it just because it's designed like other software.
Yep, and I installed it today, and I'm already making stuff with it. But anyway, I'm by no means an expert, but I am just loving what I'm seeing with it. You can
Well,
change.
you are a smart son of a bitch, though.
Well,
I
thank
know
you.
you're going to pick up things faster than the average bear.
The other thing is this whole panel on the right here, where we're looking at the density, the complexity, and the bar length. That's only one of 4 tabs there. You've got the tonality tab, where you got the progression and the key and the scale and how many bars and the time signature for the section. You've got what chords we're using. You can actually individually pick out notes of the scale right there, like set up like a keyboard there, so you can tell it whether it's major, minor, diminished, augmented with the
I
color
hadn't even
intervals.
noticed the tabs over there.
Yeah. And then you got the notes is what we were looking at because that's where it was, essentially trying to figure out what we were doing. Polyrhythm sometimes you'll turn on for the bass, so we can do a polyrhythm 2/4 if you want. And then it's got the velocities where you can have it again randomized whatever you
Oh,
want.
I love it.
Strong beat, weak beat, off beat, top and bottom.
That is very cool. We've talked about this in the past, with MIDI, making it not sound so mechanical.
Exactly.
Putting velocity like that kind of control. I mean, look at these parameters.
Mm-hmm.
For a drum track, this is extremely useful.
Absolutely. And in this case, this is the theme. This section is part of what I did. Again, I started with the Unison MIDI chord pack to pick a chord progression, and then once we had the progression picked out, I went ahead and I did the chords. I did a bass. I did an arpeggios, and I did a melody. So if we were to look at the sections where I did that stuff earlier, you can actually see like the arpeggios, for example. I mean, that's very just visually, very obviously, arpeggios like going up and going down, like that whole sawtooth that you see going on. And then you see the chords at the top where you see just the block chords that are being hit and held. And then the melody at the bottom, you're seeing short notes and long notes and short notes and long notes. And then in the bass, you're seeing it bouncing around. And sometimes it's hanging out longer on the lower stuff.
It's funny,
sometimes
the
higher
melody
stuff.
actually looks like a bass line to me.
It does. It does. And that's the thing, is that's probably much more of a basic melody than it should be. Like, I didn't really go into the orb thing again and again with it, or go randomize again to see what I can do with it. But we can also look at that to change that more. But this is what it is so far at this point. But so far, I mean, just adding those 4 elements, and that's, again, I installed this 3 hours ago, so this is something that I just started using, and just that easily, or that quickly, just get in there and just bang stuff out, because it's, once you get into, you know, how easy it is to, you can just hit randomize on this. So you hit orb again, and it'll randomize everything, and it'll sound totally different again.
And no matter how you're approaching music, whether you're wanting to add like guitar or bass tracks or sing on top of, this is great foundation music to work on top of. No copyright issues, no bullshit. Like, this will help you get started on a song.
And you can see that as I change these parameters, like if I manually change density, it's at 25. If I go up to 85 and let go, it's going to completely change, completely rewrite the whole piece. Or
Yeah,
whole
look
part,
look at how it breaks. Yeah, look at how it breaks it up into even faster hits on the notes.
And if I bring the density down to 50 or 45 and bring the complexity way up instead, it changes the complexity of what we're doing, but it's not necessarily the intensity.
Yeah,
Again,
the chord hits are getting emphasized better.
And we could change that to something else. Just randomly pick something here, terminal, for a different sound.
Oh, I would eventually want to know every one of those moods.
Exactly.
I would take one part and play every one of those to that part.
Exactly. For a bass line, sure.
Just to figure
just a
out
solid progression, and just bring it around and just keep bringing it around. You keep hearing how it goes from there. Yep.
I mean, I can visually see, like, as you change between those different moods, I can see in the MIDI, like, the mentality behind each one of those moods. The way it chops up the note hits and the holds visually is obvious.
Yep. And there's also, you can tell, you know, kind of, you can see how it breaks it up, how it's hitting much more frequently or less. You know, that has to do with the density and the complexity, but you can also, by changing the instruments, some instruments, if it has a long tail on the notes, for example, you wouldn't want it to be hitting very fast staccato, because then it's not going to sound right, or it's going to sound muddy. So it has to be the right instrument to
Yes, it depends on the part.
Goes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the instrument you're using on that part. That's what I was talking with Jason about, like, figuring out their grooves, their riffing, you know, the way they bounce. Guitarists all bounce a little different.
Yep. I also like the fact that they keep,
and that has
it's just
nice
a checkbox for keep bass for chords, so you can have it make sure that it's going to hit the root with the bass every time around, or you can deselect that and give the bass more freedom to noodle around more, kind of thing.
Oh, that's a nice option on the bass track.
Yep.
We've talked about that. Like, you know, sometimes the bass you really want to be the root driver. And other times, depending on, you know, if you have a rhythm guitar doing that for you, let the bassist play like a guitarist.
Out on theme 4, I think the bass was doing pretty active stuff here. It's also hard to tell because it's using a sound called Apocalypse. How about fat bass? Let's see if that helps.
Oh yeah, hear the difference?
Anytime there's an option that says fat bass, that gets a double yes from me.
Yeah.
Fat bass is always good.
I heard the difference.
And this is where again we can go with the for the velocity you can look at the strong beat, the weak beat, the off beat, like what you want to emphasize on what you're doing. You can randomize the whole thing.
Yeah, I love the velocity. That alone is worth it to for getting MIDI to sound human. Velocity adjustments is something that in the old days I'd have to go in note per note, and what you see on the bottom there, like
Yeah.
I'd have to go in and either randomize that so that there was a pattern to the velocity, or manually each note like up, down.
And if you look at them, they are not like it's not just like this one's this one and this is lower. Like they are all a little different. You can see the ones that are all strong are all
You see
the
somewhat
same
of a
height.
pattern down there. If you see like every 4 bars, it goes to the top. You know, there's a syncopated pattern in that velocity at the bottom.
Yep.
But those 3 bars in the middle of each one is a little more random. Like there are certain parts throughout this where it brings the middle up a little and then pulls it back a little.
And this is what you were talking about, being able to go in and manually change them, and I can just do it like just same
Yeah.
way. Go in and manually change them, and that gives it more of a human element because now it won't sound exactly the way they generated it, even though it was already sounding good and it was already sounding non-mechanical. But now you can add
Well,
a
and
little
by
extra.
doing that, you add an accent at a time where this general progression is meant to be like a boom, 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 and by doing what you did there, you put a boom, boom, ba da dum, boom.
Yep, exactly.
That's visually useful.
And you can see it right in the middle there. Yep. And again, for any of those, like you generate one that you like it, you just drag it right into the DAW, and you're good to go. The arpeggiator is pretty cool too, just from the way that one looked. For the again, what it generates is just such cool looking content.
Oh, and arpeggiators have been like since day one with MIDI. When MIDI came out, arpeggios was like the first thing that MIDI attacked.
And now for this one, instead of having the keep the bass for the chords, because that was the chord one, this one has a checkbox for allow passing notes. And right now it's set to no, but we could turn that on and
allow passing notes.
Passing notes to pass from one chord to another, so you're getting more of a flow from one chord to the next.
So like a note in the middle of the 2 chords. I like it. And I hear it.
Yep. As it passes from a G to a C to a G, like you're hearing it, it's going to add a little notes, little melody passing stuff going in between.
Yeah, again, it adds things in the middle that accent or emphasize, and all of a sudden take the rhythm of it and give it more rhythm.
I didn't even realize
off hit rhythm.
Do you see that chord progression now? It's like 5 1 5 6 4 1 5 6.
Well, you did pick one of the complex. You know that chord pack is awesome. Like they go from the very basic chord progressions to the most advanced. There's that folder with the like unusual progressions.
Yep.
I'm sure you must have gone through that because like
I browsed it. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll throw in like weird chords that don't necessarily fit with the normal progressions, but they give you an opportunity to just change key.
It's like they consider these 12 to be the major ones that are just diatonic triads, but then you can go back and look at the minor ones that are all the A minor ones, same 12 but different feel because they're all minor progressions.
Now jump back to the progressions. Yeah, advanced progressions is a cool fucking folder.
Yes,
I played around with these and they give me a lot of my ideas.
You'd like this one down here: 1 flat 2 flat 3 flat 2. That's got metal written all over it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Look at that Prague 5. I mean, that's some crazy shit.
Yep. And that, if we were to say, now it's saying that's going to be F major, right? But we could tell it whatever we want. So I wonder if we tell it.
Well, I'm
Tell us the
curious
chords.
that it interpreted that as F major, even
Mhm.
though like you are in the C major
Mhm.
folder.
Yep.
The chances are is the reason why it interpreted that way is because it's analyzing based on the chord composition,
Yep.
and it doesn't see a C major chord here because this is an advanced C major progression.
And let's
Even the
harmonize it.
AI got fooled.
Yep. Now this is without hitting any of the randomization for the orb. This is just running it as F major, 8 bars, going with starting with like a 5-2-2-5-5-6-2-5 progression, which sounds very odd, but
Not your normal.
definitely some interesting
Yeah,
additions there.
you hear those unusual chords that just like, where am I?
Hmm. This is C with a
You,
B flat. So this is
you
technically a C mix
feel
of
like
lydian at
you're
that
in a
point.
key until those chords come in. And
Hmm.
then you wonder what the hell key you're actually in.
Hmm. Yep. Because you got the C with the B flat. So it's the minor 7, even though it's a major. So that would be a C dominant.
I
So
love
that's the
seeing
C.
how this is interpreting those progressions and based on your theme. I mean,
Hmm.
it all feels like Flash Gordon right now with that particular patch, but
Hmm.
you change that to like a harpsichord, and it can become very baroque, very
Also,
fast.
the color intervals down here, the 7 and the 9, that's what's getting us the extra weirdness. Like if we just turned those off and went back to the progression, like it just changed that C, that first chord, now it's just a C instead of when it was originally saying it was a C major 7, major 9. But if we just turn those off, it's back to just being a C major.
Yeah, you
And the others, though,
normalized it.
yep, but that's just for that one chord. The other, you still got the next one is a G minor major 9, and then you get up to a C
Oh
major
yeah,
9.
this whole progression, those advanced
They're
progressions
messy, yeah.
have some crazy, but you know, that's why they're so awesome. They give you a lot of ideas you wouldn't
And then you got,
normally have
mm-hmm,
unless something nudged you to go use ninths and thirteenths,
mm-hmm, yep. And in this case, just
11s. This is
clicking on any one
utilizing
of these,
every one of them.
yep, and you can click on any one of the chords, and you'll hear what it sounds like, and you'll be able to individually turn on or off the color intervals, change it from major to minor, change what scale works around it. You can change that for each of these. Like each of these, you got the 9 or the flat 9, the 11 or the sharp 11. You can see when you select any of these, it'll have the regular one and the flat one. So I really do like the interface, the way that it's put together is just very intuitive. It seems like, again, you could just reach anything that you need to at any point. And
And
I'm sure there's tons of stuff I haven't even looked at yet that I
whether
could
you're
definitely use.
using it as a song making tool or as
Hmm.
something to practice on top of, it lends itself in both directions. I could see myself jamming to
Hmm.
what this gives me because it's like having a buddy who can come over. It's
Hmm.
like a Jeff Beck, like, oh,
Yep.
just play these chords and I'm gonna practice for a little while.
Band in a box.
Yeah, this is Band in the Box like 3.0.
Band out of the box. How about that? We got the. Definitely some weirdness there, but yeah, that's going kind of off the deep end with what we're using there. But we can always just go over there and delete that one, go browse for a different one, and then instead of using the advanced major progressions, we could go back to the diatonic triad progressions, and let's say we want to do minor this time, and do a minor this one,
I love my minor progressions.
and we're going to say instead of C major, we're going
All
to change it to A minor.
metalheads appreciate the minor progressions.
Mm-hmm. We'll base it around A minor, we'll harmonize it, and we'll see what they say.
Some will only play A minor.
Nice. Minor progression
And
6.
after listening to that advanced progression before, the funny thing is that minor actually sounds bright and happy to me in comparison.
Because it wasn't as dark as that messed up
Well,
stuff we were just doing.
you add ninths and thirteenths, and
Hmm. And got
you
crazy with it.
get some, yeah, you get some dissonance.
That was the marimba that I was checking out there, marimba decay. What about orchestra? That'd be nice. See what they think about that. Nice. And again, this is on the arpeggiator, so that's why we're doing kind of it's arpeggiating it out for us. But then we could also go to the melody maker, and that was the one where, to me, that was one I didn't mess with, but I should have the most, because that was the one where, like, the original theme, you know, it's pretty basic, but if you even just hear how it kind of goes, you can see just the long notes and the couple of short notes where it's doing the little climbs and things like that.
And next to drum AI, melody AI is the one that I am like really interested to see their approaches to teaching a computer to come up with good drums and good melody.
Mm-hmm.
Master those. All the other stuff is pretty straightforward.
Can all fall right in the line, yeah. Now with this one, I think this is the melody, so this we should be hearing it along the top there, and I have it as a power melody, so I think it was louder or good and loud on this one, but I think when I brought it over into Cakewalk, it changed everything to piano, so it actually got quieter. So here it should sound louder though.
Look at the melody pattern. It's almost like half arpeggio, half chord.
Yep.
Like
and part of that is
the AI is actually mixing.
Yep. And this one has the checkbox. Since it's a melody, it has a checkbox that's for lyrical melody. And I said, yes, make it a lyrical melody. So it's trying to make it
really?
fit
That's
words
an.
more, yeah. It's a contextual checkbox. Yep. So each of the four
I'd love
add-ons
to
has
see
its
their
own,
code.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to see
what
the
it's
code
using.
that they're using to tell it, like, to distinguish a lyrical melody versus a non-lyrical melody.
One way is to do this. That one's not as lyrical as that one.
Well, when you're thinking words,
Yeah.
a lyrical melody is going to pay attention to syllables, and
Yep.
you know the average word is not like 5-6 syllables. So the way that you arrange a melody is going to be based on 2-3 syllable words most times,
And I like
and
these
an
holds.
occasional one syllable.
You can see the holds where we're basically doing a da da da, and we're hanging out there, and then da 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 da, you know, da, and then we're hanging out there. So it's like whatever notes it's actually going to pick, you can just tell by seeing how it is breaking it up. That's what kind of makes it lyrical to me. Is it's giving space for breathing, giving space to hold on those tones there. So you're holding in that one on the F, you're holding in that one on the C. Let's see what it sounds like real quick. And then
Yeah, those little dots right there are basically the points where you can have a 3-4 syllable word.
Exactly.
Your opportunities.
To melisma it out. Mm-hmm. Could be power is not the best. That sounds like power tuba or something. Let's see how about a lead? And what do we have here?
I like the way this thing thinks.
Laser lead, classic lead. Let's try classic lead. See what that does. Perfect. That was exactly what I was thinking about for the holds, like having the little lines that move and then they hold on those notes. Very nice.
And with that patch you're using there, that's a good example of how like Bach back in the day would write lyrical melodies all the time. It was actually a big part of his style. He was like singing with the harpsichord sometimes.
Yep.
That's a good example of that. Dun 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 dun.
Now I think there's two things factoring into this of how we got the AI to do that, and one is the lyrical melody checkbox. The other is enabling the multiple chords per bar, because like we were saying, that enables it to do smoother walking transitions to go from, if it's going from a C to an F, it doesn't have to just jump C to F. It can do a C to an E to an F, or to a G to an F. It can do that a little bit differently.
There's that polyrhythm in the middle. Is that the difference between a mono melody or a
It's trying to do 2/4 as well as 4/4, so it's kind of putting a separate rhythmic phrase in there. So let's see what it sounds like by just enabling that.
Oh, so it incorporates the time. Wow.
When you're talking polyrhythm, you're telling it that you want to have two separate time signatures.
Yeah, interesting adjustments it makes there. Now,
What
what
about
if you go to some
3/4?
weird time? Yeah, it's what I was gonna say. Like,
I
if
know.
you give it like a brain fuck time signature,
Yep.
what kind of experimentation is it gonna do?
Now, technically, the way my buddy Mike described this one, where you're putting a 4/4 and a 3/4 to each other, is chop the
Rush.
goddamn lettuce. Yeah. So you're doing 3 with one hand and 4 with the other hand. So you're doing a polyrhythm of 3 against 4. So it's one of those things that it sounds really weird, and when you do it, it just sounds like it's a weird pattern. But if you actually watched, you'd see one hand doing 3 and the other hand doing 4 at the same time, and that's one of the things that keeps a polyrhythm like that going. But we'll see what they do with it.
And it's what you'll find in like the rock bands.
Yes, exactly.
Rush, Dream Theater.
Exactly. Those would be the first two I would think of probably for that
Exactly.
kind of thing. Yep.
Whoa. Whoa.
Ah, very interesting.
Those little variations in the middle there and at the end.
Do you see this note, this slider at the bottom, or this knob? Human touch. It's at 5, but we can turn it up.
So that adds a little more humanity to the holes or the hits.
Yep, the velocities, and I would say the timing is I would put it as timing and velocity. Let's see. Timing's much sloppier,
Yeah, it does give it some off time.
but if you put it
So
all the way to 0, then it would sound much more mechanical, would be my guess.
yeah,
And that's where they had it on just a little. They had just 5.
yeah, it has no. It is a velocity thing with the human eyes. It's both a timing and velocity thing because at 0, every one of those middle notes is pretty flat. They're just hitting and they're constant. The timing is on that hit, but there's no dynamics around it.
You can also set a rule, it's like every beat note, or the whole bar duration, every 8th note, every 8th note on beat, off beat, every 16th note on beat, off beat.
So built-in quantizing.
But this is more for the part itself. We could say that they wanted him to hit on every 16th on the beat. Because that's trying to do
Oh,
the
that's
every
a
16th note
very
on the beat
interesting.
and the polyrhythm with the 3/4.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, and you set it for rhythmatic, so like it's basically playing those like if they were drums.
Yep. And we didn't have it on the lyrical melody, but we could. But then it takes off the rhythmic rule. So you're either doing the rhythmic rule or the lyrical melody.
Yeah, because they really wouldn't work together, would they?
Yep.
I
Now,
mean,
one other,
maybe. The exception there would be like if I wanted it to write like a rap melody where da 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 da. I want the melody to actually be rhythmatic. I wouldn't be surprised if they incorporate that along the way so that they can actually play together.
Indeed. Now, one other aspect, like we looked at the orb chords, the orb bass, the orb arpeggios, and the orb melody. One thing we didn't look at was the orb synth, which it has its own wavetable synth right here built in.
The fact that it comes with a synth.
And it looks like it has all the things you'd want it to. All the different waves, all your different oscillators. You got everything you'd want to play with. You can change the
Well,
voices.
The
stuff.
voices, like when you go to their library of sounds for their synth, how do they because I would imagine this is general MIDI compatible. So like, general MIDI says 128 instruments are the standard for modern music, and 00 is a piano. 01 is piano 2, 02 is piano 3, and then it gets into electric pianos, organs, and so on.
Going all the way up through them. It starts with the acoustic ones, so you've got the acoustic bass, the clavinet, horns, all that stuff, piano keys, smooth nylon, like all that stuff. Definitely, I do like the fact that it doesn't seem like you have to drill down too much into the categories, because each category does cover a lot of ground, and we can also favorite out any of these that we want and build our own little library of favorites down the bottom, so we don't have to go find things.
This is a challenge for every synth and guitar effects and everybody else. How you start your main categories and how we think when we're looking. I'm looking for a sound for my keyboard. If I'm starting with a base category of like pianos, guitars, how you drill down to the sound you're looking for.
Yeah.
Every type of synthesizer and effects has that challenge of making itself easy to discover and at the same time find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Now this one was more of a funky piano, so we went with that. But like I said, we can do all kinds of stuff in here. This is kind of getting pretty deep into some stuff. Like, this is the kind of thing that some people look at that and they're just like, whoa. And
Most people, if they're not like into actually synth sound designing, will find a patch and like, oh, funky piano, like the piano sound, happy to use it.
Exactly.
And
that's the thing, is, a lot of depth if you want to go deep on it, but at the same time, you don't have to. You can just utilize the tools.
Well, the only reason why you'd have to go that deep, if you didn't like that patch, it was close, almost like the piano I want, but it's got a little too much ringing. What can I adjust over there to bring that down?
Yep. And so that was what we were doing with Cakewalk and the Orb. What did I say it was called? Orb Composer. Yes, Orb Composer. And that, again, I installed that earlier today, so I didn't have a lot of time to go into it, but we did just...
I can't wait to see what you do after a couple of days, because I can't believe how much you did this afternoon.
Yeah, and again, it was not difficult. Again, just dragging things in and just kind of observing which things are where and the kinds of things. Again, the more you look at the different kinds of software, the more it makes sense where things are, and just don't be intimidated. Just jump in. The whole main thing is when you're jumping in and it's a new project, that's one of the best things, because it's a new project, you can't really break anything. I mean, it's a new project. If it starts getting all messed up, you just exit out, say save no, go back in, make a new project, and start over. Same thing with the art stuff. Is just diving in, not being afraid to just dive in and get your hands dirty. Just dive in and try it. And some of these are just so easy now. And what they've and the one we didn't even get into yet, we're going to look at it next week, is some of the other AI stuff that I found where it was more generalized, or instead of more general AI, it's more a whole list of very narrow focus specific AIs, but one's for chat stuff, or like I was saying, one to write a tagline for ad copy, or one to extract this from there, like just being able to use natural language.
Tying into that keyword AI, like that word recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And now, trust me, word recognition isn't just about music generation. With lyrical writing, and I can see word recognition helping people to write lyrics and poems in the future.
Absolutely.
Without actually like making it bland, nudges of words.
Now this would be the video that we were looking at before, the collab where I built these 4 images.
Oh, finished rendering.
It finished rendering, so it's got the video all done. It's like I said, it's a 23-second video, so it probably finished a while ago, but just a small version of it. We'll see what it looks like here. This is going from that essentially 4 random pages where it just goes with shades of light and dark with the color palette that it makes sense for what it was trying to do, and then turns it into images over the course of 23 seconds.
It's like Google Earth.
Cool. It's like you're zooming in, you're getting the rendering. It's like starting to get more and more detailed, and it's like it's getting impossibly detailed at some point. But at the same time, again, it's kind of small in the way I'm viewing it right now, which I apologize for. But we can bring the image up to full screen even and see if that makes any difference there. Or maybe we can't. Nope, doesn't want to go full screen. But you can download them and do whatever you want with it at that point. You can also go picture in picture. The main idea, though, is again that was just a pretty cool background. When it does finish,
Oh,
it
I
leaves them over
love
here,
that final. Yeah, that
and
last one right there. Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
yep, and it leaves them as PNGs. So these are 4 PNGs. They're all 512 by 512 in size, and they're very small for like 500 kilobytes, I think, for each one. So every 2 of these is a megabyte, so it's really no space taken at all
Even
for
on
that.
my bandwidth, I can deal with that.
Even with yours, you could deal with that. The videos themselves, they do give them the same names all the time, so it'll keep overriding these. So if I did more projects, I would need to download and rename them in the meantime. Otherwise, they'll overwrite themselves.
Well, we're constantly having to rename shit. If you're downloading from BandLab, like
Yeah, exactly.
rename
You're
those
used to it.
tracks because that gobbledygook is not identifiable.
Yep. So this was the Google collab that came from this guy, the AI Whisperer. Well, he's the one who gave the link to it right down here, the Google collab for the art generator. AI Whisperer was his YouTube site there. We were doing the canvas, which was from NVIDIA, and that was another video that we had over here. That was from
I really
NVIDIA.
want to get my hands on that.
Yeah, and that one again.
Once I have an RTX card.
And even if you don't have the RTX card, you can start playing with the features a little bit with the Gauguin one, which is the one that's online here. And you dive more into that. Again, I didn't get too far into that, so I didn't do a very good tutorial showing that. But right in the top of it, it does have run tutorial and view tutorial video. So there is 2 things that you can look at right at the top there to get started on that. But just the fact that it's able to turn text in, just regular text into actual images and then start from there and make the rest of the image after that. That's the part that I'm most excited about it for that. Plus, you could also give it input images and go from there. So you can take stuff from the one art program and feed it into there as an input. And
From a big purple middle finger.
From a big purple middle finger, exactly.
To this.
supposed to be a waterfall. But all right, it didn't quite work out like it's supposed to there. But still, that was a fun one too. And again, it's the same engine as this one here. And with this one, I can look at some more of the. Just look at a couple more of the projects that I did with this because there was some pretty good stuff. Again, this one I also installed. I think it was also today. So this is all stuff that I just did this afternoon or at 5 a.m. I get apparently. So,
you started early.
Well, no, I was still up. I was working late at that point because I tried to go to sleep. I did, but then I just had AI on the brain, so I came back. I was like, I got to look at some more of this. But some of this, like for example, I did this very badly in terms of I did it all as one layer. So like this whole thing, everything that you see in this image on the left, that's all
it came
one layer.
out beautiful though.
So I can't separate it out, and that's just with the one style, right? So like that's the style of one of the ones I imported from the background images. But if I change it to one that's more of an autumn scene, you get the whole different color scheme. So it just changes all that stuff. And again, any of these we can just click through, and some of them will look a little bit weird with the way the borders are going and all of that. But sometimes you get just the right one where it was a theme that had rocks and river, little going along, and the flowers or whatever. So it doesn't have to always be flowers, but.
And on this particular one, that one you were on before,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to make that look more realistic, the fact that those layers are there, bringing that into Photoshop, I could smooth out anything that I had a problem with, and by the end, it would look like it's for real.
Yep.
Because the separation in that island in the water,
right,
very easy to fix in Photoshop.
Yep. And that's the other thing is whether it's in Photoshop or even it could be somewhat fixed right here in terms of just taking the water and saying like
giving the water a particular style that
just
blends better,
and like making the island not stick out as far. I could draw on that side, or I can come on this side.
Yeah,
and
actually,
draw
as
on the island itself.
you do that, as you brought it back, it starts to make it look more natural.
And a lot of that is just going along the edges. That might be too straight, and a little more indentation over here. So you can change all kinds of things, whether you're drawing on the right side or the left side, which I like a lot. You can do it on the sketch side, or you can do it on the actual image to really see what you're doing. And then the same thing, it looks like the background kind of falls away on the left side. So that's where I would put in like a mountain or something over there. And that's kind of thing where you can just add a layer real quick.
And again, these are the little human touches that when you do this on top of this kind of AI, just like with the music, starting with like a good base foundation and then nudge here, a little erasing there, add a note, humanize a little bit on this offbeat. AI is not a bad thing. What these things are doing is part of the creative process these days. Nobody should act like, oh, I'm never going to do that, because If you act like that, then you're not going to be part of the art and creativity of tomorrow, because people are going to use these tools to
Absolutely.
enhance the way that they write or visualize.
Hmm. And again, it's just, I mean, the ease of use and the ease of just being able to say, oh, I want to put a, like, let's put a C in the background over there. And I can just say, grab the brush and just put it back over here.
Well, the fact that it's easy is,
Hmm.
this stuff has actually been around for a while, but it has not been accessible.
Hmm. And now we got water. A little floating island of flowers there. Pretty cool. And again, like by doing everything on separate layers, you could turn the clouds on or off. You could turn the water on or off. You could turn all the different elements. But again, I did it poorly by putting them all on one layer. But that's just me basically learning good Photoshop practices by doing the
Well,
wrong
and
thing and then going,
like
I
I
should
was
have done it
saying,
differently.
like I was saying earlier, this is going to help you to understand Photoshop later, because a lot of the things I'm going to show you about Photoshop, these layers and this approach will apply.
Yep.
Not just Photoshop. I mean, any image editor, any video editor, um, even OBS. Every program that deals with things on a layered approach, top is what you see first, bottom is behind.
Yep.
This is a standard.
And in this case, what I did, this one I did it right. This only has 3 little things that I drew, but I drew that whole winter scene with all the intricacy of the trees, with the snow on them and all that. That's just with a layer of mountain like that, a layer of vegetation like that, and the clouds. And so just with three clicks, and I mean, drawing those obviously didn't take any time because you can see what I did on the left
And
there. It was
again,
just
look
draw
at
a
that.
rough shape and fill the underside.
Look at that general depth of field. Like
Yeah.
that could have been taken from a camera,
Yep.
and that's how a camera would photograph that scene.
And then if we switch to the fractal theme, then it changes everything like dark and light. Pretty
Very
cool.
cool.
Or you can go with like the fiery, like more yellowy, or go with the reds, or it looks more like it's Arizona or what have you, Nevada. I mean, there's definitely just so many different cool things that you can change. Now, talking about depth of field, this one really
Yeah, there.
focused on the foreground,
Yeah.
and that's because of the style of that image. And again, it has to do with the images that I pulled and set up here, the ones that have more depth of field, more items in the
Well,
background, and more
on that one
density.
with the heavy depth of field, if you were
Hmm.
taking a picture of this scene,
Hmm.
I'd likely, at least one of my shots would do that with
Right.
heavy depth of field, and I'd want to focus on like the prettiness of the patterns in front. Then
Hmm.
I might like change my f-stop and bring the depth of field so everything's sharp and do a landscape.
Hmm.
Like
This one's got
that.
the sun coming through the mountain.
I mean, that's the same picture, and each one of those changes the dynamics of the impact, whether you're
Hmm.
focused on the front or the back or everything together in a big, glorious picture.
Yep. And the type of foliage again is relevant to the terrain in terms of like, if I change from this one, it's got more pine cone stuff. If I turn to a different one, it's going to be more fern stuff or whatever. Like it'll take cues from what you're feeding it as a
And
style.
just like we are with our ears and hearing patterns and intricate things, visually, different foliage, patterns in nature, leaves that do cool things, ferns with all sorts of sharp edges. These are the kinds of things that are aesthetically pleasing.
Hmm.
The greatest photographers out there compose the image, find a subject, and emphasize those leaves on that fern.
Hmm. And even just starting with little scribbles like this is when I was saying where I just did that little slanted sand at the bottom so that this to see if the ocean waves would come in and interact in a good way. And then I just started like literally sketching to try to put some gravel on the side, and it started building up just like that.
Yeah, I like how it built the like wave pattern across your browns there.
Yeah, yep. And if I tried to put in like new hills and I just started over here, you could let's do it as a new layer. Just
And it accurately represented what the ocean would do as it hit that like little land area to the left and then swooped in to that gullet.
and I'm just telling to bring this hill up, and it just keeps going up, changing the whole rocky shoreline there,
See, that's amazing.
changing the image like real time as I'm doing it, getting
It's
more
like
dynamic.
watching the world get built.
Yep. pretty crazy. And again, you see what I actually drew on the other side. It makes no sense compared to what came out on the right.
Oh yeah,
Just
the fact that it
drawn
goes
on.
from the scribbles to that is just mind blowing.
Big hill on that side, come around this way. Now it's a channel coming at us. Pretty cool. So yeah, again, I just started playing with this, but I could see myself doing a lot more playing with this going forward. Absolutely.
I can't wait to see what you do with that.
And again, a lot of it's going to come down to the styles, because that seems to be where the most flexibility is, because the materials are what you have to work with. You've got those 20 things, but those 20 things cover a lot of ground, because you've got the grasses, the bushes, the
Well, I expect
sands
those
and
materials
woods
to
and
grow.
rocks. And they'll
As
probably
this
grow over
software
time.
grows, those materials will start to become even more, or they'll start to incorporate particle generators. Things that are big in the 3D world. You'll start to see materials that are animatable.
Going back to this one again with the
Well,
big purple
actually,
middle
it
finger.
looks like there's a couple of them in there.
Yeah, exactly. With the big purple middle finger, if you go back to buildings, they have a whole category of buildings where you got bridges, fences, houses, platforms, and like those are not part of what we were doing already. But that's a whole other section
Oh,
of getting the AI to put in all that stuff.
and architectural design AI, I would imagine that there's been a couple of people who put some thought into that. Tomorrow's building architects are likely to be computers.
Yep.
They're better suited to design a building that can withstand a earthquake of this magnitude. A human can only get so far there in their thinking and design, but mixed with some AI, you could build a house that cannot fall.
Mm-hmm. What about a bridge? No. And of course, you got to check the box at the bottom. Don't forget that.
At least you don't have to prove you're not a robot.
Now that's one scary looking bridge.
Whoa.
What if it has a road under it? That might be better. And again, you have to actually initiate the change each time. Kind of still a rickety bridge. Need some more supports, right?
Yeah, it's the kind of bridge you're going to run into in your games.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no way I'm going across that thing. You crazy.
Well, not unless I have to.
But of course, we would need some water behind it, I'm thinking, right? So we don't have to spend too much time playing around with this. This is just, again, looking at the ones that water, the ones that we have options for here. Again, the buildings and the
So they let you save on both the template side and the rendering side.
mm-hmm. Yep, and it's basically we can change and have it go that way. We're putting the water over there.
Oh,
or we can do it the
now
other way.
you're talking.
And the thing is, I didn't even fill that yet, but the idea was to fill.
That's a
the
Mad
water
Max
underneath as
bridge.
Well. Let's see if that changes it much. Oh, there you go.
Leading
So
to
we got
Thunderdome.
the
Whoa.
water underneath it, and since I cut through these pylons, they basically rendered them as just other elements underneath, which is pretty cool.
Can't
And that
believe you
bridge is
did
pretty
that
well
that
lit.
fast.
And again, it just changes as you go. And I was taking kind of a Golden Gate Bridge, the opposite of Golden Gate Bridge, like putting the suspension that way, just to see what it would do. We could do, what about buildings? Fence, house. Put a house, over here? No. Oh, it's on fill, that's why. No, not fill. Brush. And say this.
And again, that's going to help you to learn Photoshop, because those basic tools you see up there,
Mm-hmm.
same tools every image editor is going to have.
And see, there's
To,
a little house there.
to some extent.
It looks like a little brown pile of poop over here, and it looks like a house over there. Not bad.
From poop to a house, you're doing good.
And we didn't even look at the styles. Like, that was whatever the default style it was looking at was. And we can change each style, and it'll change everything. Like, you get the reflections of that super sky like that. And just, this one's more of a blue sky with the green in the background. So each of them, it'll totally change the image, but keeping the elements that we told it, but the reflections like that. That's awesome. And this is the one that anybody can play with on the website. So this is not one that you have to have an RTX card for, which is, the one that I was using before. But this one, anybody can go mess with it. It looks like it has more options in terms of some of these things, like the buildings and the grounds and plants and whatnot. But the other one is a little bit faster and utilizes your local RTX hardware for what it's doing. But yeah, this is,
I
again,
would be happy to be able to use both.
Yeah, Just and
Four
then
di-
again with those
four
couple of lines
different
that I just came
results.
out like that. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one seems to produce slightly different result in the canvas,
Hmm. Yep.
and a slightly different approach.
Hmm. And I dig it. And it doesn't look like there might not be a way to add more styles, so you might be limited to only using those styles, but you have more flexibility with the items that you can build with. Because again, we only had those 20 materials in the other one, but this one has a lot more.
And as more people are using this, those styles and those templates are going to grow.
Hmm.
People build on top of technology like this. Photoshop, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of brushes, layer styles, um, canvases, that patterns, textures. Once they define standards like this, the community builds many choices.
Hmm.
That's the key to good technology. Open source, open ended, make it so that people can add more on top of it.
Hmm. Let's put some stone walls in just to check it out.
It's
Very
crazy
cool.
how it utilizes that in the reflections in the water.
Hmm. That is the key for me as well. Just the fact
Yeah,
that it
really
puts so much
fast too.
detail into the images that way.
I mean, the speed at what it's doing it as is amazing because rendering with water in the old days, I spent 16 hours rendering a piece of art that I did in 3D because
Hmm.
I had the water reflecting the characters and the sky into the water.
Nice.
Not the 16 hours, but it turned out nice. This is doing it in seconds.
Yep. And that's what a difference a couple of years makes, right? Because this is the stuff that they were just talking about. Like you're saying, 2019 seems to be 2018, 2019, whatever. In that time frame, there was some big changes that happened, and
I think
they've
that
been able to
text
commercialize.
recognition AI,
Hmm. Yep.
it, I would suspect that the ability to recognize keywords and turn them into instructions for other AI is
Hmm.
why all these AIs are starting to move faster because
Yeah.
now it's more accessible to non-programmers, people who
Hmm.
don't have to know Python and intricate coding can just say, draw me a picture of flowers in front of a mountain.
Yep. For this one, all I told it was Circuit Board Grand Canyon by Tim White, 512 by 512, 700 steps, 4 images at a time,
And
and display under
specifying an
25.
art style
Yep.
or artist style.
Yep.
Again, recognition from the
Hmm.
basic words to a database of, oh, Tim White. Well, what's his style look like? Okay, I get the gist. Let me draw this. Does this look like a Tim White picture? No, let
Hmm.
me keep rendering.
Yep.
Now,
And that's what it is. Every time it takes, it keeps looking back at it, and that's what I also like about the video that it saves at the end is it gives you that journey through its thought process, essentially going from because again you're starting at just a very blank screen essentially, where it's
you're
just
watching a baby
nothing,
paint
and you're watching
right,
a baby paint,
right now.
and you're watching 4 different ways. So you're seeing just 4 completely random different pages that they started with, and 4 completely different endpoints, but they all match what you told it to do in the first place, which is awesome. Like the one in the bottom left there looks more like I said, more like jade, more emerald, gemstone kind of look. Where the ones on the bottom right and top left are more like rust, that kind of thing. And the top right one reminded me of the copper that was aged. It's very cool. And each of those, again, they're 512 by 512, but the other link that they give you right at the bottom is to super enhance them with another AI that'll bring the 500 by 500 images up to 1760 by 1760 with no loss. So you can get them supersized if you want to, just by using this other research collab with any of the
Yeah,
images that came out really particularly well.
I'd really like to see how these scripts run, like with the RTX at like super high resolution,
Yep.
4K. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays that's the standard in resolution.
Hmm. Now, with each of these are just some of his suggestions for prompts, and just like the Tower of Illusion, like we mentioned, Thomas Kincaid, that was one of the keywords he was using for a particular art style that he wanted to see. Beautiful epic fantasy, a futuristic boat, fantasy world, an Unreal Engine. Just the way that you can feed it very natural language and have it come up with things. Or architectural visualizations in Unreal Engine. That's one I definitely got to look at, because architecture is a wide open field for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I really would like to see how this approaches architectural design.
Mm-hmm.
That's an art form in itself, on top of art, because structural design, always been fascinated with that since high school. They taught me like what a Gothic cathedral was, and
Mm-hmm.
my dad's a carpenter, like how houses are built and where studs get placed and for integrity.
Yep.
All of that
It's all important stuff.
makes for the shape, makes for the strength of the foundation.
Mm-hmm. How about architectural concepts, Spaceship Art Station HD? That sounds good.
It's going to get a lot easier for tomorrow's sci-fi writers and visionaries to present their idea of the future.
Mm-hmm. And again, this
Now
is
that computers are helping them.
Yep. All we had to do is come up with a concept, a few words, feed it in a good phrase, and you come up with something. And that's also where I think this is. They tell you, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And in this case, they're just reversing it, where I give it a couple of words, and it's going to give me 700 pictures. And those pictures, will tell a story, and that's where the video comes in. It tells that story of how they came to those images.
A word is worth 1,000 pictures.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's doing 5 iterations per second, so it's basically generating 4 of these 512 by 512 images every 5 seconds. And that's gonna, it'll take a while. So we're not gonna watch this, but once every 25 that it hits, it's gonna spit us out another set of 4 images, eventually getting us to where we have that finalized image. And it's just the coolest thing to me, that it just comes out of nowhere, comes out of nothing, and turns into something very cool like that.
And royalty free.
Royalty free. That's right. I generated it myself. It's like I take no credit for what I did, but at the same time, nobody else can.
Well, you can take credit
Yeah.
for what you did. Discovered it, learned how to use it, learned how to use the parameters to get something. That's still effort. Like the difference in tomorrow's art versus the past is that the effort you put in and how you get to what you're trying to get, the path changes, but it still takes work.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to discover it, learn how to talk, even if it is in text, and get you something close. There's still going to be a lot of creativity on top of these technologies. I do not think these replace the artist.
Right, definitely.
Tomorrow's
They should be
artists
an
will
extension
complement
of the
them.
artist. Exactly.
Yes.
It should be something where they are using it to complement their skills, or seeing how they can utilize things like this to more quickly generate a background, to get a starting idea. Whether you're going to use even if you're not going to use the background, it could just nudge your imagination in that direction and say, oh yeah,
Yeah.
a scene like that, or a color.
A little influence goes a long way,
Yep.
especially with the music ones. I mean, some of what I see there with Orb is going to help me to like get past some of my changes that I'm wondering about, and ideas that I'm trying to develop. It's going to speed up a lot of the process.
Now, some of those changes are perfectly natural at this time of life, Tony. Just kidding.
But I
Always
wish I
gotta
could
have the changes.
I wish I could arpeggiate like that consistently.
Consistently. I mean, that's the thing, is it could be.
Well, I can play it for a bar or two. Just
trying
don't
to
make
keep
me
it
do it
going.
for 3 to 4 minutes.
Exactly. Gets a little tiring, or you're distracted, or
Well,
whatever. There's always going to be something.
I'll never play it consistently for 3 to 4 minutes. If the purpose of that track is to do that part consistently, it's part of my like playing performance failure.
And that's one of those things.
By
that's
4
also where you
minutes
can
in,
extend the loop. You just do, if it's the same pattern the whole way through, you should just be doing it for 3, 4, or 4 or 8 measures or whatever it is, and then loop. Extend, and then you're just copying that same thing over. So you're doing the Lego brick approach at that point, instead of actually having to record for 8 minutes straight of doodle 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 doodle. Like that does get repetitive, and it doesn't. It won't necessarily sound like you copied it if you do a long enough sample.
It's not even necessarily a challenge to my fingers. I mean, I can get my fingers to play that for 8 minutes, but even when I'm trying to write riff or a couple of bars, my brain starts to like go into a different riff. I could play the same chords 8 bars later and not even feel the groove I started with, which
Yep.
can be good and can be bad. I don't like forgetting the groove I started with in a song, but at the same time, sometimes it helps to like move the progression along somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm
That's what I had
trying
to
to
bring up.
record the song, I need to go back to the original riff in order to finish it.
Now, we had originally talked about Orb Composer, and I was telling you that I did take
Oh,
the
this is
Orb
what you
Composer
brought into
output and I
BandLab.
brought it into BandLab so you can see what it looks like. One thing it did reverse these two, Orb Melody 1, the MIDI's below the wave, and in the other three, the MIDI's at the top. It's not a complaint, just you'll just see that that's why these top three are obviously MIDI, and then there's a wave, and then there's another MIDI, and then 3 waves after that. And that's just why I did it that way. But it's got the mix at the bottom because I did told it to export the mix and to export the individual tracks. But this is the way they come in, so you get them all as fully editable MIDI. You can do whatever you want with them, change them around.
And
All
it
that good
brought
stuff.
in both MIDI and wave.
Yep, because I told it to. Yep. But just look at that nice, neat arpeggiation. It's all check marks. Check, check, check. All good.
And see, for those who can't necessarily play a part on an instrument, just seeing this shows you like how you can punch in a part. Listen to this and realize that you can click, click, click with a mouse and make that arpeggio.
Yeah, 48 seconds long, and that was 8 bars of this, 4 bars of that, 4 bars of that, and then repeat the 4 bars and the 4 bars again. End up with a little 24-bar thing, and there you go.
And that's a nice mixture of both a little bit of arpeggiation driving you forward and then some chord hits for a couple of bars, and the melody never gets lost across the way.
Yeah. One thing I noticed is that the chords definitely feel like they're being just hammered on, so it feels like they're all hitting at 127. So I would definitely need to go back and humanize that a bit. Or
Yeah, that's where some of those adjustments, whether it's the complexity or the humanizing, those two definitely seem to affect levels and where hits get emphasized.
Now, what we could do at this point is we could actually just take all of these that are part of the chord stuff and select them, which always sounds fun. And just say humanize.
That's what all chords sound like together.
And if we humanize the whole thing, it should change things up a little bit so that it doesn't sound quite the way it did before.
You know, it's funny. In the beginning of MIDI, quantizing was actually like synchronizing, and now it's gone full circle because humanizing these days is the key to getting non-mechanical music out of mechanical instruments.
And the other thing is to use, some people will use quantize to fix timing issues that were there, and then humanize to get back off of the robot sound. So they're just trying to, an easier way than trying to manually move all of these notes to try to get that feel. But I'm curious if it does add much of a humanized flavor with this.
And quantizing serves a purpose. That does feel more human.
Now, the other way to do it would be to basically select them all again and tell it to randomize instead of picking an actual velocity. So random velocities for all that, and then it should be all over the map in terms of how it actually sounds with that. You can tell by the colors of the notes too, the lighter greens and the darker greens. optimize it. You can randomize it. You can manually go in and change the velocities of individual notes. You want something particularly loud here, or there's one that's just sticking out to you that you need to bring back down. All options.
Yeah, see, I could see utilizing those on sections
Mm-hmm. Yep.
just to like make the bridge more human,
Mm-hmm.
or a chorus, because the humanizing there when you were going through those different ones did sound very natural, where they chose to do the emphasis.
Yep.
The hits were on the bar, just a slight modification to the bar.
And I think part of it is the fact that they really were just all exactly the same the first time around, so they really did sound robotic, because it was like somebody's just sitting there and hammering the crap out of the keyboard, just really leaning into it. And if you do change it, where there's some dynamics, now it really does just pop out a whole new feel to it.
It does seem to stretch some of the notes, or shrink them down on how long they hold,
Timing, yeah.
based on those parameters.
Yep. That's partially the humanizer, partially the random, depending on when it actually did that. I didn't notice if it did it between the two.
I'm going to be curious to see how this works for you with beat generation, because a lot of this is part of drum AI too, and
Mm-hmm.
that really does look like it has all the same logic that the drum AIs utilize.
Yeah.
You start with like a kit instead of a traditional instrument.
Mm-hmm.
That same mentality can make a beat
Absolutely.
and change its complexity and its shuffle based on those dials.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Now we can also, let's see, that was from the Orb Composer one. I just wanted to show you kind of what it looked like when we brought it to BandLab at that point. And that was more just, when I got the project there. And
So you basically went into the Cakewalk project manager and said, "Here, throw this up there.
yep,
Throw
I just
in the
told it to
master.
publish. I said
Throw
publish
in
to
a
BandLab.
wave master of each MIDI. That's fucking awesome."
Yep. Just a couple of checkboxes, and you can just look at it. I mean, looking at it from here, it definitely looks very generated. It doesn't look like,
Well, yeah,
I
you
guess it's
see the
just
pattern,
yeah, exactly.
and you see the consistency in where those parts get played over each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first two there, and then it doesn't really repeat again till almost towards the end.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I did the first third of it was the one phrase, and then it was four measures, 8 measures for the first phrase, then 4 measures, and then repeat that 4 measures, 4 measures. So like you can see the repeating, like that really tall one, in kind of a little past the middle there, is the same as the one at just past a third of the way. It's like there are different intensities there, but that's the same starting of the same section essentially, or the way it ends is the same as the way it is just in the middle there, because those sections are the same, just copied over. But pretty cool stuff.
That's going to be the approach I take. Make the MIDI, do it over on Cakewalk, get it all set up, use the project uploader, slap it up as a project, put a wave render and the MIDI track, and then you guys can go nuts with the MIDI.
Yep. That's the way to do it. We're up to 3 hours 51, just so you know. So we have about 9 minutes before BandLab is going to cut us off.
About that time. How's our
that
pumpkin
time.
doing? She's still out there?
I haven't seen. I think she's around, but she's around if we need her, I would say. But at the same time, she's probably not sitting there tapping her foot waiting for us, because she knows that we got the keys, so we can always shut us down when we're ready. In the meantime, though, we had some fun with the art stuff, and we had some fun with the music stuff. There's also the general purpose one. We're going to talk about that some more next week.
Oh, this has been a great evolution of what we started with. The image AIs you're showing me now, next level. The music AI, we are now cooking with some serious gas with Orb. That's the coolest one I've seen so far. The one that I wanted to see the most of. So cool that you hooked us up with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely one that we're going to have to experiment with a lot more. And that's one of those things that it's just I can tell right away that it's going to be worthwhile.
Well, and it's tricky because I do believe like this AI is going to grow based on the open source and community driven AI, but Orb is so impressive that For one that costs a little bit, and for what it does cost, it's worth it for one feature, let alone
Hmm.
all the features it has.
Yep.
The
And we'll see.
synth.
I'll scratch a lot more below the surface after day 2 using it.
Yeah, this is
Definitely
the
take a leap.
first day.
And most of this art stuff I started, like I said, middle of the night last night. I couldn't sleep at first, so I just got back up, found one of them, and just went into the rabbit hole. And I just started looking at this one, and then started looking at that one, and I started getting all my links together, and I was like, wow. And I started getting all the images
Hey,
into the layers for this and the styles.
if you're not gonna fall asleep and your brain's gonna keep going,
Hmm.
go running and jumping on this stuff is a great way to utilize that time. Oh, that looks like
Absolutely.
underwater snail.
Yeah, yeah. And they had the one that which should look the most like underwater is this one, because this one was actually an underwater image where the entire image was underwater. But as you can see, what I sketched out on the side there was supposed to just be all sand and like a little bit of whatever grass, I guess that is. That's the other thing is you can use the color material picker and just to see what that is, and yep, that's sand. So that was basically sand and stone is all it was. And I was just saying, sand and stone with just these little lines on it, figuring it would do dunes or something, and just depends on what you select. But you get water in there, and the
And
fractals.
I was just thinking, like, some photographers might feel like, damn, I don't want to go out there and take these beautiful scenery shots anymore because look at what this thing can do. But
But
this
that's
thing
where it's
is
getting it from.
driven
Yes.
by beautiful scenery shots.
Without the
Smart
source images, it would not
photographer
work. Yeah.
is going to be like, I want to feed this.
And again, a lot of it comes down to the palette. So like a lot of the ones that I picked here they have to do with the palette. Like this one, you're not going to see much, but you see the star field and you see the way the initial image was. There was like a little green tent at the bottom or whatever, and you get the Milky Way at the top. But there's just with any of these images, it's essentially using that palette or that style, and it's like
That's
you're saying for the
another
foreground
underwater
versus the
one.
background. Yep, foreground versus background, super close up on the features up here because that's the way the initial image was, the source image that we fed it was framed. This one is much more, it had like the castle on the side of the lake over there or the side of the river. So even with just those couple of lines that I gave it, it came up with this really cool looking river over here. That's obviously not what I drew in any way, shape, or form, but just the fact that it transforms to that when you select that style just makes such a big difference.
And it makes something so random. Even YouTube Pixel AI detector is not going to look at this and say, oh, this is from a copywritten image somewhere, because
Mm-hmm.
whatever this is deriving from, it is not an original image.
Mm-hmm. Because it's all based on the scribbles that we fed it in terms of an image kind of like this, but with like this way
Whoa.
and this that way and all that. You got rock on the top there, yeah. It's pretty cool. I was actually trying to get there was one that I had. I can't remember which one it was, but it came through and it actually looked like it was all sandstone with like cuts, like the lines that I drew were like sandstone cuts that went through. It looked pretty cool, but I'd have to click through them all to
But
find it. But
that's
that one,
another underwater one.
that's pretty cool. That's like the water, the waves coming from the distance there, but there's also the rocks above them. It looks almost like two separate layers of seashore crashing. Pretty neat. And of course, you get the wintry ones that always get that little bit of ice, that cold feeling. So much
See,
of that has
now
to do
at
with the
some
palette.
point, you're going to want to organize those styles.
Oh, absolutely.
And, the materials right now aren't so bad that, like, nice to have them all, like, right
Mm-hmm.
there. But
Yep.
styles, I could see wanting to make folders and
Not even folders at this
categorize
point.
styles.
I would probably even just remove because again, I have at this point the main thing was the sun, or the light source that you're getting. Like this one has the light source straight in the back there. There's probably a bunch of them that all have the sun right in the back and similar kinds of looks because a lot of the ones I had were beach shots,
Well, I
a
would
lot of them were
definitely have a
snow shots.
sunset. I'd have a
Yeah,
sunset folder. I mean,
yeah. Well,
there's a
that's the thing is they
zillion
don't.
sunsets.
It doesn't really have folder breakdown from here. Like you can add the new styles, but they all add to this one main list, and then the only thing you get if you right click them is to remove. So it's like you can add them here or you can
I
get rid of them.
I guarantee you,
I'm sure
as
there's got to be
they
ways.
refine this, and right now, Nvidia's not they're, they're not a company who makes usually this kind of software. They focus on the 3D side, but the UI building engine that OBS uses, that all of Adobe's products use, modular tabs where you can these styles, you can load up a style library. And now what you see is the sunsets. Load up
Mm-hmm.
a mountain library. Boom, different styles.
Yep.
If they incorporate the same kind of interface that other software uses, that style section will allow you to load libraries of styles. And it
This is what I was talking about
won't
before.
take them long to do that.
By removing the sand or by hiding that sand layer, this is what I was talking about with the cutout. Like you get the rocks where it just looks like they're all carved. But that's the sky
Oh.
shining through.
That's like that movie where the dude fell through like the was
Got
stuck for like
pinched
18
in the
hours.
crevice. Yeah.
That's probably
Exactly.
what it looked like.
And again, changing the style changes everything in terms of, this one's going to have like vegetation on it. This one's going to
Holy
be more.
crap, that looks cool.
It's like super surreal.
That's almost like an optical illusion with certain ones there.
Yep.
It's like that could be real.
And then if I just turn the sand back on, it just changes it completely. And then all of a sudden, oh, now it's a river. Oh, now it's not. Pretty cool. And again, I could just clicking through them all and just changing one thing and seeing how it changes everything is very cool. This game, same thing. The focus changes because of the way the image was framed in the beginning. The palette changes.
And just like the music AI, what you start with and the AI turns into. Think about patterns on that left side. Like, whether you're talking like a starfish pattern or a fern pattern, and how that translates into the portions on the right.
Yep.
This is a new way of thinking artistically. Tomorrow's artist might not be thinking of what types of paints they're going and buying, but rather what shapes and patterns that they're utilizing to start a layer.
Mm-hmm.
And then what textures that they might apply to certain layers. The 3D, when you mix this with the real 3D aspect, you can texturize one object and let the rest utilize this flat approach. It's going to be wild.
Yeah. Now on that arpeggiator over here, just to kind of randomize again a little bit with the orb, this is one of those major progressions that's really messy, like 8 different chords, but if we just randomize by hitting that orb button there, and just see what we get a couple times here.
This reminds me of Bach on synthesizer.
A little bit robotic, a little bit, like that, but we could always say allow the passing notes and then see if it changes what it did right there. It already rewrote it for us. And then we could take the human touch and bring that up from 25 to 65. Complexity down, density down. Pretty neat.
Totally sounds like Bach on synthesizer.
Randomize again, and now we got a lot of hold notes in here, so this is definitely a different theme than that one was.
Oh, wow. Just shoved a little Mozart in between them.
Nice, I like it.
Wow, again, you could incorporate that into metal. That little
Yeah.
bump, ba-dum, ba-dum, bump, bump could totally use in metal.
Definitely.
All right, I think BandLab dropped.
Yep. It did. It killed us at 4 hours. That was a minute and a half ago. Good stuff.
Almost at a perfect 4 hours and
Yeah.
4 seconds.
Yeah, yep.
Irony.
So I guess I'll just say goodbye to people in the chat then. I mean, it didn't seem that the chat was too active there, but that's all right. Mine doesn't always update all the time.
Oh, mine stopped updating like at the dad's.
Yeah. Last thing I got was from Ominous Filth after a squirrel. Squirrel. Good stuff, though. Glad we were able to get through all that And like I said, I got some more stuff that's on the same lines. Some more of each of those, and I'll have some more experience with each of those by next week. I'll be an old hat with all of it, but I'll get some more of that, and I'll get some more of the other stuff from the art.
This is some
Definitely
good
cool.
shit to be specializing in. Like, let's become beta testers with these fucking people, because
And I did already sign up for
this
each of
is
them.
the shit that I will spend time developing.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the way I looked at it too. I was like, yeah,
Hell
I'm in.
yeah.
I'm
It,
in.
if being an orb purchaser gives you access to them, and I'm sure that the kind of feedback you're going to give them, they're going to be like, yeah, this motherfucker's testing this shit.
Yep.
Plus, you're reviewing it, you're showing it off. They're going to love you.
And that's where the question was whether, does that get us in trouble or is that a good thing? I think
No,
it's way more
this
on
is
it's a good
going to
thing.
be a foot in on the future of music making through computers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean,
Excellent.
they have definitely taken the most robust approach to AI with music. Of the ones we've looked at so far, their interface and the what they give you based on just a little bit of input
Mm-hmm.
has the most commercial use for for an artist. The other AIs are interesting in variation and arrangement ideas, and what a computer can do with nothing other than a slight nudge.
Yep.
But how you can utilize those in your everyday music making, it's going to be tricky to figure out. It's like obvious. This is a fucking tool.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Even if they didn't say there was AI involved here, if I had checked this out and said, like, I like what this is doing and what I can utilize it for,
Mm-hmm.
even if there was no AI aspect to it, it would still be useful and cool.
Yeah.
The fact that there's an AI that can be taught
Oh, dude,
makes me
this is
want to get involved with them.
this is something that we'll probably look at next week. But this is more. It's basically the video that goes over that new AI. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, as part of it, it actually gets into other aspects of it, or it just shows more. Actually, we did watch this one. It was the other one. There was one that was about the Cohere paper. That's what I'll have to find. That was the one that had the other stuff. Yeah, that one. And this is where it had the sign up right there. So it was like, you could sign up for it and check it out and all that. So like for some of the stuff, I was definitely checking them out like that. Large language models, limited access, release notes, all that stuff.
Yeah, let me check and see if Ian stopped the restream.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we could be on YouTube still right
Yep.
now.
That wouldn't
Which, if
shock me.
we are, hey.
Exactly. It's all good. If we are, we'll just explain that BandLab kills us after 4 hours. So that one we figured it killed all the streams, but if it didn't, that's fine too. We'll continue looking through stuff. And like I said, we have more for next week. Whether it's the art producer, whether it's the art stuff, and the other one I was trying to find was one of the OpenAI Codex, I think it was. This is when I joined the waitlist for.
Oh,
'Cause it
hold
talks
the
about
phone. This is the one that translates the keywords.
well, this is actually it was part of the same rabbit hole that I went down, and I think based on the icon, this
The
looks like the one that was
standard.
part of Muse store, but this is Codex is the model that powers the GitHub Copilot. It's basically this one is one that writes code. So this is one where this is crazy. Watch this.
That
They're gonna
turns your keywords into code.
this is crazy. This is crazy.
Okay, pause for a second.
Yep.
I'll be right back.
Yep.
3 hours.
Yeah. And like you said, we should check on the streaming too, because that would make a difference. We did end there. We know that for sure. And the other we'll check when he's back. In the meantime, though, check in on the artwork that we were doing here. Because this one was Spaceship Art Station HD Architectural Concepts. And so far, almost halfway. 350 would be halfway. It's been running for 29 minutes. So it is about an hour, it seems like, to run the full run. A little over 5 seconds in iteration for 4 images at a time. And they are starting to come out. Nice. Very cool stuff. This is the one that we watched before.
How is that even possible? Well, if we don't feel like drawing, instead we can just type what we wish to see, and my goodness, it not only generates these images according to the written description, but this description can get pretty elaborate. These gaps with a written description.
Even just looking at all the different things that they have here for the landscapes, the ground, the plants, and the buildings. Lots of good options there already. And that was the one where he did the northern lights up on top. If you do generate things with this one, you share them on social media with #Gaugan.
Why doesn't every home in the U.S. have solar panels? The number one reason is not about sunlight or weather or even
Alright.
This is just one of the video tutorials from Gaugan. He's cleaning up the sky there. So that was that one. The one that we were talking about here is basically making a space game with OpenAI codecs. I wasn't sure if you wanted to check on the restream or if you already did that.
Was loading.
Cool. I got a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, we're still streaming on everything else. BandLab, we're done. But if you want to go through this, it's recording.
Excellent. Yeah, this one is creating a space game with OpenAI codecs. And this was from OpenAI.com and a blog post from OpenAI codecs. And this is just crazy.
See, now this kind of AI conversion from keywords to games has actually been around now for like 15-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot simpler back then. It was basic text conversion to like make Space Invaders.
Mm-hmm. In this case, you're actually watching it generate the Python code for you. So it's pretty freaking crazy.
That's a programming teacher.
Yes.
The computer is now teaching the human how to speak to it.
Add this image of a rocket ship.
That's some crazy shit. Whoa, get out of here.
Now, this is my favorite thing right here.
Now, again, this is higher.
Make it be smallish.
Okay, does it actually understand smallish? No shit.
That's where I was like, okay,
This-
you got me. You hooked me there.
See, this is what's been happening over the last 30, 40 years. Programming has become higher and higher level. The core programming, the machine language programming that like we started with, which was a bitch to a human, was not designed to program at that level, except for a rare few. These higher level languages that C Sharp, JavaScript, that utilize classes to talk to the lower level system easily. Load this instrument or initialize this device. Those languages from the 90s till a couple of years ago were the dominant way that programmers were talking to the low level languages. This shit
How long would
is
it take to
now
tell it to do this
bridging
part right
that.
here? Like you take go half speed, okay, it's slowed down. But now, when they want to, well, the scroll bar is one thing. They do after this, they talk about basically a turbo boost. But the complexity of this statement, after they do the background and all that, you'll see in a sec. When they animate the next step, right now it's just animating, bouncing back and forth.
Get
Right?
out of here.
Now, when the rocket is clicked,
They're adding interactive code now.
temporarily display some text saying firing the thrusters in way on the current location and temporarily speed up.
See, this is a programming language just about anybody understands.
And then it says choga 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 choga. And it goes, okay, click on it. Phew,
And it's a little complex.
phew. But
Like
fact that it's
the
able to do
instructions,
that, mhm.
and they're very specific. I mean, look at the English instructions there. No. Oh, and they picked an asteroid to add.
Yep. They said this add this picture. It's 3/4 the size of the ship.
In the same way they said when you click on the rocket ship, do something. If you were to say when you click, fire something from the rocket, they're building
Precision guided.
asteroids.
There it is. They are.
And the
Horizontally
beauty
and
is,
vertically and bounce off the wall.
everything it's doing is being done in a traditional programming language that you can go into and tweak and refine to perfection. I mean, all that code makes sense to me.
Yep.
Now, when the asteroid hits the rocket ship, make it explode.
Now the asteroid's going to go faster than the spaceship, just by a little. Track score.
Oh, I see. He's selecting objects when he's setting certain things, like he's
To me, I wasn't sure if he was selecting them that way or if he was just highlighting it to show you where it is on the screen, kind of thing. Like to show you, hey, see, it did put it up there, but it's just a font you can't see, so now I'm going to make it larger.
well, with this kind of approach, how do you know to change, like score? If you had multiple text on there doing different things, and score has a parameter, in traditional programming, you identify objects. If the object doesn't have an ID, there's no way to tell it change something on that.
And now you're checking collision every 10 milliseconds.
Oh, adding collision detection that simple is a
Want to see if it switched from not overlapping to overlapping, you lose 5 points.
Oh, you could always go and adjust your IDs in the Python itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as new things are being created for the screen, the code is generating an object ID
press turbo to get out of the way.
And you still do need to understand certain triggers, like collision clearly is something that it recognizes for what it means.
Yep. Because
And
it
collision,
was calling it overlap there too. It was talking about
co-
overlap, check for overlap, and then was it not overlapping, and now it is.
and collision between multiple objects. I mean, you could have multiple things on the screen where some collision gets detected and not others, which means you would have to group um, different things that are collisionable versus that aren't.
Mm-hmm. And now they set a winning condition.
Like after you get hit so many times.
You have to get to 250 points. He's just about there if you can avoid being hit. Yep, there you go. Tells you how long the total time was. He'd probably want to change that font, but again, just being able to do all that stuff.
You know what's kind of funny is we're going back to basic game development days and mentality. You're going to see some of these games over the next couple of years and be like, oh, why are people making games like this? We've already done Asteroids. But as this develops and people start to make games this way, you'll see different Asteroids than we saw in the 80s because they're building it this way and it'll evolve faster.
Now, when I was at Stevens in Hoboken, one of the guys in my dorm actually wrote his own version of Tetris, and he called it Citrus, S-I-T, because it was Stevens Institute of Technology, so he called it S-I-T, Citrus. And what he did is, like, it was actually pretty cool. He had it, being able to drop random blocks down. Like, there was additional twists to make it more difficult than the original Tetris was. And also he had
that's what everybody's been trying to do.
Things going around. It was pretty
it's not
cool
about building a better mousetrap these days. It's about making a better Tetris.
Yeah, exactly. Because Tetris was already hugely popular at the time.
And fascinating for its simplicity, but yet what it fed gamers. Even hardcore gamers who'll go sit in Warcraft these days, where Tetris was like crack for any type of gamer.
Oh, yeah. We played the crap out of it back then, for sure.
Instantly addictable. Yeah. Simple, like for the Game Boy. I mean, the music, like track, but yet, just like Mario, burned in your brain.
This was actually a machine learning paper from Cornell that started it. GPT language model fine-tuned for publicly available code from GitHub and Python code writing capabilities.
This is the next level of programming language. Just like Windows is kind of at the end of its versioning cycle. At this point, Windows 10, whatever they want to call, or Windows 11, technically we're done with versions at this point. It's a platform in itself. OS 10, what it's evolved to Mac OS. These operating systems can keep coming up with new names, but they are what they are. And programming languages in the future, you're not going to get a new core language. They're not going to reinvent the wheel to talk to hardware and initialize it to devices. Future languages are going to be high level like this. Text to code conversion. This one apparently writes in Python, correct?
Yep, it does.
Hey, great language to make visuals, and Python talks to hardware very fast, very logically. So even if you don't know Python and you can tell this what to do, and you look at the code that it makes, you can convert your English that you told it to what it does and say, oh, the parameter it did there, not exactly what I wanted. Change it from -500 to 250 and carry on. Keep telling it in English, go tweak it in Python. It'll teach some to program in that language. Oh, is that one you were generating?
Yep.
Oh, that came out cool as fuck.
It's on 475 out of 700. So Still got some time. This is the we seeded it with a space station. What did we say?
I was going to say, that looks like a space city.
Yep. We told it architectural concepts, spaceship, art station, HD, because that was one of his recommended generative phrases, and it is 70% done after 45 minutes.
I really do believe that these approaches, they're the next JavaScript. JavaScript kind of opened up programming to a much wider audience. It's a syntax that feels like English once you understand how you compose your instructions.
It's
Doesn't
not
take long
unnecessarily
for
complicated like it used
anybody
to be.
to, yeah, it doesn't take long for anybody to learn JavaScript programming these days. Today's kids are modifying HTML5 and making it interactive because they pick it up quick.
Yeah, and even Python. I mean, I
This
can definitely
text
see. I'm going to be
conversion,
diving into Python for sure. That's just
well,
at
with
this
the
point.
graphical stuff, you're going to love Python.
Hmm.
Python has always been a powerful bridge for imaging and 3D programs. All the good 3D programs out there can run anything if you can hook a Python script into it. You can go run another program, generate something on that program, grab it from a folder and bring it in. Python is like low level but accessible at the top.
Yep. And especially with all the natural language stuff now, I mean, it's getting even more accessible, even easier to tell it what you want it to do. You just tell it naturally, and as long as you can articulate, and that's the key thing to me also with the AI stuff as well. I was like, the guy called himself the AI whisperer, and I was thinking that was a pretty appropriate kind of thing as far as if you can figure out the concise
You
phrase,
can whisper to the AI.
you're whispering to the AI just what you need to do this, and that's where to me it's like, yeah, the key phrases, because being somebody who appreciates the complexity of language and the complexity of how to, you could say the same thing 15 different ways, and if you said the same thing 15 different ways to an AI, you're going to get 15 different results. So
Oh,
knowing the better
and
ways to talk to them.
and just like humans, they can misinterpret
Oh yeah.
things.
Like the barbarian wedding I told you about. I don't
Yeah,
think I
well,
showed you that
when
one
you
yet, did I?
see these, that's the thing with these high level languages. The misinterpretation at a high level language is much more varied than at a low level language. There's no misinterpreting. You misidentify a device or you don't tell it exactly what you want in C, it does not happen. But in C sharp, you could still tell it to do something, and it just doesn't totally understand your instructions.
Now tell
Whoa,
me
this
that
came
doesn't
out
look
of the
wrong.
AI?
This was the
Dude,
AI doing the
that's like
barbarians.
Clive Barker wedding.
It was barbarians at a wedding, but I mean, I was looking more for like a celebration, like a barbarian style wedding. But what we got was, I mean, you see this linen tablecloth over here? You see these flower garlands these guys are wearing? Like, no, that is not what we were looking for. But the AI
No,
took
that's a
barbarians and it took
Clive
weddings.
Barker Hellraiser
I was like,
barbarian wedding.
I
That
was like,
shit's Cenobites.
I was like, are you shitting me? Like that is what it came up with. I'm like, no, no. But when then
Whoa,
I said, what
that
about a feast?
Spartan battle.
Oh yeah. But I said, what about a feast, right? So for the feast, one thing that was cool about it is like it was coming out all right. And then what's this like dripping slice of pizza on the wall? I'm like okay. Pizza. I didn't think they had pizza back then, but it's a festival. Like this looks like part of like the king's head, like half of his
Well,
head with a crown on top or
actually,
whatever.
it looks like that dude's on the table being fed. Like it's a human pizza. Oh, that's a little scary.
Yeah, it's some bizarre stuff though, and it's like again, this is AI just going off of key phrases. The Spartan battle that did come out really nice though. That was Spartans battling animals is the way I set that one up, and
Oh, and the way they did the colors.
yeah, that's Frazetta, so that's why that's where you're getting all that from. But like this, it's like you see the arm. It's like, is that his arm or is that his arm or is that like part of somebody? It's like, what
Oh,
the hell's going on here?
and the reflective armor.
Yeah.
Like, again, when this shit starts to incorporate with the 3D engines,
Hmm.
um, you gotta you could take this if it was at a 3D scene
Hmm.
and bring it into the scene in 3D and make those barbarians actually like fight in that.
Hmm. And you can see these are still 496 by 496. They're under 500, and I just blew it up to 200% so we can see it better. You can see the pixelation a little bit now, but if we use the AI to increase the size, then it would be bigger than this and not pixelated at all because
See,
it would
and
retain.
this is 3D also. If this was actually rendering in 3D, it wouldn't have to worry about pixels as it's rendering the 3D objects. The pixels get applied as textures. If it renders the textures at a resolution after it does the models, it can actually accomplish much bigger resolutions with RTX kind of shit.
Mm-hmm. Experimental guitar. Doesn't look too much like a guitar. Looks
Wow,
like pieces of insides of a guitar. It's like Picasso got to a guitar.
that came out of the AI.
Yeah. I was asking it experimental guitar to see what it would come up with, like, what's next in the evolution of guitar, and this ain't it. But it's pretty cool.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a human out there who tried to make this. If the computer can think of it, there's probably a human who will too.
Earlier in this is one that ran for a while, so I think it was less messy earlier in the process, a little bit, but it was still definitely not looking very playable.
That's a nice piece of architectural, like abstract architectural art.
And you can see it's clearly based on a guitar with the frets and essentially a fingerboard and kind of a guitar body style to it, or like the insides. But yeah, I mean, the AI definitely was taking into account what I was telling it to do. But this guy also had
That's
really
the
good
kind of
colors.
thing that without this AI, you would have to wait for like an art student to like do this for a college project or
Yep. And the reef, I like the colors of the fish and all that. Like that's once I did a reef colony for one of them, I just started like feeding it to all the artists. I said reef colony, just had them all do it because they were coming out really cool.
Oh, that looks like something out of Atlantis.
With the fishies on the reef.
It's beautiful how it incorporates the textures like in the corals
And you can really appreciate
something
it at the
that looks like
close-ups
a
this.
brain on the table.
Yeah, brain coral. Yep. That's exactly. And then he also did asteroid mining colony. Or at least I told him to do asteroid mining colony. At one point I want to say I put the keywords as asteroid mining colony disaster. So you'll see like explosions happening like underneath some of these things or things crashing into other things. So it's like they had a blowout when they were trying to mine something off the asteroids.
Yeah, that looks like a ship that crashed on top of a
And like an escape capsule shooting off to the side. But that was one of the ones where I really liked the result of like the asteroid mining colony and the reef colony and things like that. So I did ask a bunch of the different artists, like do them in a bunch of different styles. So like Vladimir Kush was another good one. Like this one was pretty surreal. Like that experimental guitar came out really cool with this guy.
Yeah, some of those guitar pictures are album cover galore. Like
Exactly.
shit, man. I don't even play guitar, and I would use that for my cover.
Right? I mean, it's because it's so bizarre, but really good
It's like
quality.
a musical
like what it looks like to me.
seashell.
Yeah, exactly. Guitar crossing a seashell. And then I did one that was the keyword I gave this was breakfast in Fiji by the same guy. And again, just using very simple keywords and just what you got, AI. And I mean, you can see in the back there, like, yep, that's looking Fiji-ish back there. You got your whatever this is, whether it's a shell or sandal.
Oh, I totally want
to
to render these. I mean, look at the nice detail you're getting, like blown up here. Imagine if this was rendered at like 4K.
Yeah.
That detail, even when you're zoomed in, just becomes like something you could use like what would be a virtual camera to like zoom in down the yellow brick road. This is the Wizard of Oz.
And this really is the yellow brick road right here.
And visually, with that kind of resolution, you could zoom in until you're like right on those slippers.
Yep. And these, half a lime over here, it kind of looks like. But
Oh yeah,
breakfast in Fiji.
there's a lime on top of that.
Now I did another one, gladiators, with this guy, but I said gladiators versus animals for this guy as well, and got some different look to it. There's definitely not as identifiable, but definitely looks kind of like an arena with the sand at the bottom, and I don't know what kind of animals these are, but it looks like water bears, like those little microscopic animals
Yeah,
of some kind or whatever.
the water mammals.
Tardigrades.
Yeah. They had it on South Park for an episode where they accidentally mutated them. They got
Yep.
smart.
And it wasn't the sea monkeys though, but it was like the newer version of sea
Yes.
monkeys. And then I also told him to do a reef colony, so that one also came out like with a pretty cool brain coral look to it as well there. It's like a brain coral roof on a little glass house.
Yeah, there's a lot of like insect-like design to.
And part of that is this particular artist, because that's where again I'm feeding it. This is all Vladimir Kush, so like I just
I'm liking him.
went for a top. Yeah, he's definitely got a cool style. Tim White was another one that I came up with. This one, just looking at the colors of these, the dark purples and the super bright neons. Very cool shit.
Oh,
Like,
very spacious feeling. Like that shit's
what I-
another planet.
So here's the asteroid mining colony for this
Oh
guy.
shit, man! Some of these, like, that's a heavy metal album.
Yep. And again, asteroid mining colony disaster. So you see the explosion in the middle there, and you see the ships flying around and all that. Very cool. But that was asteroid mining, and then we had the experimental guitar, another one here, and this one with the same really cool color schemes. And this is like a flying space guitar, because it's like you see the fretboard here is kind of based on a fretboard, but it looks like a huge space alien flying around.
Totally. Like, this is the kind of heavy metal artwork, for the next heavy metal. Again, if this was like 3D models, I could incorporate what I have here into 3D space and say, move it across the screen, and then take the camera and zoom in until we go into like that eye in the front there. And
Exactly.
there's some dudes flying this ship.
And they're up in the bridge up on top. Now, this one was pretty cool too. Once I saw the color scheme that was going on, I was like, what about like a car race? So I said Grand Prix 2050. So that's like I
Wow.
try to futurize things a little bit. And so I was like trying to do like a stand in the background, and like this is what the cars would be looking like, but with an insect front. It's kind of weird.
Well, yeah, like something's making them run. Like those two in the front are like, get away from that.
And here it comes. It's coming. Exactly.
But it does feel like a race. Like they are on a track.
And then I went with Robot Community, and that one came out really cool.
Oh, I love the way they make those green things really look like they're natural.
Yep. And at one point, this is one of the ones that rendered for a really long time, and you can see on the bottom right one of the green things, it's like it almost looks like it's got writing on it. And at one point, it looked like really did look like it had writing on it, but it's sort of AI'd its way back towards just random pattern almost. But it did almost look like it had text all over it.
Well, think about it as it's generating skin for something. I think this AI does grab from like elements of images, not necessarily like saying I'm gonna write the same thing I'm getting from this image, but
Exactly.
I want to make it look like the side of a mechanical panel where it might have like an ID or.
Exactly. This one was Wasteland. For the I was trying to find the other one that I had where it was it looked like Shutterstock.
Oh,
It looked
that
like
thing's
one of the
floating
images
in
generated.
underground green goop.
Yep. Now this is Wasteland 02, right? So this is early in the generation. This is probably at like 100 images in instead of 700 or whatever. So this is early in the process. But when you see what it turned into later in the process, same image, just now that we're a few hundred more iterations out, it turned into this.
What would be a Pink Floyd album today?
Right? You get the pink robot cow insect in the back there, and industrial something in a wasteland on the right. I was like,
Could be a pig, could be a cow.
yep. and this was just called Wasteland. So this was one where I was just like, whether sometimes do post-apocalyptic whatever, or Wasteland this, or just, you know, something. Because again, looking at his style of art and then just coming up with words that, you know, could provoke an image like that to come out. Kincaid was another really good one. This is one you just see even in the small ones, the asteroid mining colony and how it
Thomas
got warm.
Kincaid.
Yep, Thomas Kincaid.
Yeah.
And then Cygnus X1 as a black hole. I was trying to get some of that, and you get like a lot of pink and blue cloud stuff going around there, nebula-looking stuff. And they got the experimental guitar came out looking almost like a building with this guy.
Oh, I love the color choices on that bottom row.
Yeah.
Wow, that came out beautiful. And, you know, putting in musical instruments like that and what you get when it does things like this, album covers galore.
Yep. Because I basically was asking it to extrapolate, like, what would be, you know, an instrument in the future. And this one was future orchestra under Cygnus X1 is what I gave it to, you know, fed it as a thing. And it actually, this one did render for a really long time, too.
It's like
Still has
they're
a lot
in a
of
casino.
And it's a lot of the pink cotton candy stuff is like you know, they were unsure of what to do, but just looking at this gray stuff in the foreground and the kind of letters you see on this little screen, it's like you're seeing instruments that don't exist or things that could represent futuristic instruments. And this is like, you know, you see the orchestra pit, you see the music stands and stuff, but
Or music represented as cotton candy.
yeah, there you go.
And just encapsulating those that are playing it. Like, that cotton candy's alive. That music is surrounding the players.
Mm-hmm. And then we also did the reef colony with him for the same you know, idea but different result. Very cool colors though. With this, it's like more like a building in the background that almost looks like, you know, Neptune's castle or whatever, you know, with all the reef stuff in the front.
Again, I see brains.
Yep, brain coral is quite common on the reefs, and they call it that because it really does look like brains. Crazy stuff.
Like jellyfish that live above.
I did a little Tex Avery, and it kind of I tried to get it to like do rabbit and duck.
Oh
Figured
wow,
I'd
that's
see.
like Ren and Stimpy, huh?
Yeah, it came out really weird, and it was actually bizarre. Like it looks like, you know, body parts and blood and stuff on the table. Like, what is going on here? It's like a butcher
Well,
shop where there's a duck chopping apart rabbits or something.
Well, I think he's giving her a shotgun. Looks like there's a bone in his mouth.
It was definitely bizarre, but also it's time to see like Rex or
Well, there's definitely a
Tex
rabbit
Avery.
that got fucked over on the right. Like, that rabbit, it's gonna
Not
get
happy.
eaten.
Yep. And down here you see Tex written on the book, like it's always like scrawled out in like almost in blood or whatever. But this is
Yeah,
Tex
that was
Avery.
probably his last message before he got pinned up there.
Yeah. So that was Tex Avery AI art, and then we had Seth MacFarlane.
That was
Taking
Tex
the ball.
Avery?
That was Tex Avery. Yeah,
He was a comic book artist
Yeah.
at one
Yeah.
point.
a cartoon artist. Yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then Seth MacFarlane at the mall.
It does look like Seth MacFarlane in the middle. And look,
Yeah.
there's fucking the Family Guy dog.
Yep. I was gonna say Stewie, but it's not Stewie. It's Brian.
No, that's Brian.
Brian Griffin. So Seth MacFarlane at the mall. We had Rembrandt. We had that the Ange face, and we also had one that was a Knight's Celebration from Rembrandt. Definitely some
Cool.
weird color choices for Rembrandt, but interesting the way it came out, though.
And how they put figures. I mean, the dude in the wheelchair is like very interesting.
Yeah,
Is that like a king?
almost
and
looks like a Cyclops.
What's in front of him? Like the
Yeah.
thing in front of him is like a space.
It's like freaky.
Yeah, he's not the human. This is a little space being that came down, and the humans are around him worshiping him.
And you can see a couple of them wearing hats to worship him, right? Like three
Yeah.
of them have the bright neon hats going on. Not sure what's all going on there, but then again, when we saw what it did to Ange over here.
AI art interpretation. You know, there's a show right there. Like,
Yep.
put up an image, and then ask the audience, what do you see?
Now Raffaello Ossola, this one was awesome. It was like I think it was Creatures of the Forest. is what I put it in as, and I let this one render for a while. So it's like it's creepy, spooky, but pretty cool at the same time, like
Oh,
with the colors and the way
it's
it
a
came
little
out.
bit Fraggle Rock.
A little
And
bit Fraggle Rock.
little like Predator,
Yep.
aliens. What's
You see
going
this?
on in the woods?
You see this middle one with like the long hair and like the face that's kind of like halfway there, and it's got like the horns or whatever on the side. If I back up to an image slightly before that one, that face was actually it was turning into like a beautiful face, but then it turned into a monster after. So it was like you could see half of it on this side it was starting. Bless you. It was starting to turn into like obviously like a real person's face. I was like, oh look, it's gonna it's gonna do it, and then it just went and like turned into
Now,
like bark and stuff.
think about that text AI
Mm-hmm.
that we were watching as they were telling it to adjust the game and
Yep.
focus on this. As this is painting
Mm-hmm.
and you see aspects like, oh, make the guy on the right look a little more human.
Being able
Give
to put
him
in
2 eyes.
guideposts, like you see where it's going, and you're able to nudge it back this way or back that way, or make the face more like the left, not like the right. As far as if it's half one way and half another way, just getting it to try
AI
to
like this,
mirror it out. Yeah.
AI like this will benefit from like live rendering feedback
Yes.
in real time.
Yep. And how about his experimental guitar?
You'll get people staring at a render for hours,
Mm-hmm.
telling the computer, okay,
A little
nudge a
more
little
like
more
this,
here,
and a little less like that.
a
Yeah.
little more of this color, a little less of that.
This one reminds me of cousin Jeff's Micro Brute keyboard, with it's got like all the external wiring, where you literally are connecting this thing to this thing, and this thing to that thing, and this thing to
But
this
there's
thing
a
to make
guitar in
things.
the middle of it. I
But
see
there's
the
a guitar
hole.
in the middle. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's got like necks going in several different directions. Looks more like a
Oh,
sitar neck going north.
and the shit at the bottom, like I almost see like 3 or 4 electric metal guitars down there, all kind of, dude, that is a cool fucking design.
And it's got the artwork in the background, like you'd see picture frames, and you can see how they're kind of spiraling in on themselves. Pretty cool. And again, like none of that was, in my description. This was me just saying experimental guitars by Raffaello Ossola, and that's what I got. But Moons of Saturn, that one came out really cool too. It was like a whole. This one ran for a while, and at first it started as just like a palette of the different things, but then it started actually rendering like the moons themselves. I was like, ooh, that's pretty cool.
I see a smiling little moon on the right there with one of those little hats that have the propellers on the top. Yeah,
Yep. And then I
that's
see
what.
one. I see a puppet in the back. Like I see the 2 eyes and the mouth and like the big head.
Oh yeah,
on the
that's
top.
Ange.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Ange in the back
And then in the
there.
front bottom right here, you got one with like the long white hair coming off. This one's looking at you like, right under the one with the propeller hat.
Yeah, it's kind of like the happy sad faces, the theater
Yeah.
pain
Yeah, yeah.
faces, like and yay, those two.
Little of both, but interesting
And
color choices on that
and
too.
and at the bottom of that, you actually had like a Michelangelo fucking, the ceiling paintings. Look
Yep,
at
yep.
the bottom of that shit.
Yeah.
That looks like the fucking,
Sistine Chapel,
yeah.
exactly, in that same kind of flowing style. And
And a fortune cookie.
yep, and another reef colony from this guy, which also came out really cool. And this one, you got the building in the background, and like the whole foreground of the image is this whole pinkish reef,
See,
spotted black and yellow fish.
you definitely see the universal patterns and the fractal approach
Yep.
with like some of these. Uh, Everything looks like something that's like inside of us or growing out of trees, and
Or both.
you're seeing them almost at the like micro level, but with resolution.
And that's another one that I want to check out is microscopic art, microscopic photography, whatever way you would call it. But just because like
The shit down
photographing
there
the
is
inside of
as
cells and shit.
Yeah, it's as cool as what we see out in space these days,
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
because our sensors, like, we pick up more looking in there than we do shooting out in space. Our
More
sensors
experimental
out there
guitars.
are very limited. Oh, that's a Dookie guitar.
And it's got like a little flag on the bottom right, and a whole weird headstock on the top right.
That's what they play in the sewer.
There you got the Dookie guitar. Dookie guitar. And we did Moons of Jupiter for him instead of Moons of Saturn. So that one came out pretty cool there with the colors. And like the rocks in the background. It looks like kind of a mushed up face in the bottom center and on the left.
The
Like
three
faces.
guardians. Well,
Yep.
they're the three watchers of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, like, the universe has three things that define it, and they probably look something like that. The green one is the natural.
And the purple one is the supernatural.
Yeah, the mystical. And that one on the right is probably the realist and should be in the middle between those two.
Making it all
What's
happen.
interesting, though, is look at the shit they put in front of that. There's 5 little pods in front of those 3 things.
Yep,
There's a
representing some of the
story
moons.
there.
Yeah,
I could write a story around that.
absolutely. This one also kind of looks like faces. Like this one looks like it's got horns on the top right. Like they're cyclopses, like the blue-faced cyclopses.
And it has a signature.
Yeah, that's the other thing, that some of these do pick up a signature from the artist, and some of them picked up, like I was saying, Shutterfly or whatever. Like they just, in this case, this was Paul. What did I say this was? Paul Lair. So that's probably either Paul or, like, it looked almost like Paul. Like you could make that into a Paul or whatever. But it's not trying to copy the exact words, but it's more the style of the way he writes, I'm thinking.
Or the AI is picking up an element, a consistent element across the pictures. So,
That's part
you
of
know,
the
the
style, as
AI's
far as
got
it's concerned,
60 pictures of this artist. If that artist
they
did
all
that on
have-
every fucking picture,
Yep.
it's an element for the AI to analyze.
How about Mike Judge at the arcade? You got a little Beavis face going on there.
And a little butt head over on the right. Well, he's kind of like Silent Bob. But
Yeah, pretty messed up looking faces, but at the same time, you know, something about the style was the main thing. But I was just trying to, like, you know, generate a little something from each one just to see what was going on. Matt Groening did a little bit there. He's trying to do the cast of characters.
Oh,
and it
Simpsons.
and it kind of combined them all together, it seems like. Like that one looks sort of like Lisa wearing like a pharaoh's hat or some shit.
Oh, yeah, she's totally like half Cleopatra. And
And the one on the left looks like it's somebody pointing at you, like the big hand, like, you. But what is the face in the background? It doesn't look like Homer because it's got hair on top. Or
well, you
whatever.
definitely got Bart there on the left. Like
Yep,
that little
exactly.
blue dude, that's a little Bart gargoyle.
And that's the thing, is like, you don't know, my question to the AI essentially was, how far can it go in similarities towards those before it starts getting into, copyright territory or whatever. And again, this is stylistically accurate, but very, very much not the same.
Technically, it doesn't go into copyright territory unless it actually claims a character. That is a Bart gargoyle, but it's not being advertised as like Bart Simpson. It just happens to look like him.
And all I had told it was cast of characters, figuring it would try to either give me all of the cast of characters or combine the cast of characters or mesh them together. And I thought that would be kind of a cool thing for some of the ones. I did the same for one of the cartoonists, and it actually made like one cartoon that is a conglomeration of all of them together. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
And again, if the AI is analyzing aspects of an artist, does it recognize characters? Matt Groening, does it recognize Bender, Bart, Homer?
It had to, at least physically, because you saw what it actually did with it.
It had to, based on the art style. Like Bart is a character. If it's got 60 pictures and Bart's in 30 of them, it'll recognize that character. But does it actually? Is it aware that that's Bart?
That's the question.
So if you in text say, draw me a picture of this with Bart Simpson in the style of Matt Groening, that's a lot of information for it to process and say, to focus on the pictures that it has with that character. Can it recognize Bart in its database for that artist?
This is one of the MC Eschers trying to do frogs and turtles. Definitely had some weird
I mean,
patterning going on.
some artists and their interpretation of their characters, that's part of their distinction.
Hmm.
When you're asking the AI to do something in text like that, its ability to recognize those characters really want to dig into that code
Yeah.
and
And
see
each,
how
each of
that
those
AI analyzes that text.
each of those code blocks, they have them right there for you. You just click right here and you can see them. For Da Vinci, I tried doing a bunch of blueprint stuff, just thinking that he had like his flying machine blueprints and stuff. But I also checked him with experimental guitar for him, so in a Da Vinci style.
See, in Da Vinci, he did think of like outlandish kinds of mechanical contraptions. He invented the helicopter long before they did.
And that's why I said flying machine for the other one I did for him, to see what they would give me. Pretty cool.
It must have drove him crazy to live in a time when the ideas he had were not accessible yet.
Well, him
And he
and
probably
Tesla.
realized, like, yeah, well, Tesla definitely, the next couple of 100 years are going to need to catch up to Tesla.
This was one with
We're
Hanna-Barbera,
just
I
starting.
guess. Either Hanna or Barbera. And I said cast of characters for this one, or all characters, and it basically tried to conglomerate them all into one, which looked kind of cool too. It's got like a smile and a mask and all the different colors of all the different
And that could
characters all
actually be
meshed
a
together.
Disney. Ironically, that could be a Disney evil character.
Yep.
The Phantom of the Opera. If Disney ever said, hey, we're going to make the Phantom of the Opera, I bet you he'd look like that.
Yep. This is the guy that had the reggae frogs, or like I just told it to do frogs, and they all came out with like the red, yellow, and green on them. And
I noticed
man,
the frogs when you showed that.
especially like the one on the bottom right. He just looks like like the big bud frog, bud, hanging out down there.
I like the stoner purple one on the left.
Yeah.
And the stoner on the right.
And
Like,
then
that dude in the middle is surrounded by stoner frogs.
I saw the frogs. I was like, okay, what about reggae crabs? And so we got Mr. Conga Player over there, and we got the red, yellow, and green all over. I like the water in the background too. That was pretty cool. And like almost stained glass in the top center.
3D would be awesome here because I could make each one of them dance like
Yep.
to a beat. Feed
Exactly.
a MIDI track into them and say dance based on the MIDI data.
Yep. Based on the transients.
And then move around left and right during the song based on the arrangement, and you have an easy video once you've told each thing what to beat against.
Mm-hmm. It's an experimental guitar that looks almost like a peeled apple in terms of the texture.
Oh, totally see the peeled apple now. Holy shit, yeah.
Crazy. And he had a really good reef colony too.
Whoa, I like that head with the white afro over on
Yep.
the right there.
The real brain coral.
Well, that's where the leader lives. Like all the people live in the city in the front there, but the
The boss man.
king lives in that giant skull.
And then
And he probably looks exactly like that.
Eta Carinae is a big nebula, or a big supernova remnant explosion, and it kind of looks like this, but instead of being like rocks, it's just exploding gas in different directions. But I was just seeing what it would do with it, and it's pretty cool. Like it almost looks like, whatever, something growing on this was bacteria growing on small particles or something.
Slurping off the rock. Inside a
zoomed in.
library. It's like
Yeah,
it's in
you
a
see the book
giant
back there.
universal library.
Yeah, you see like stuff over here looks almost like a car dashboard. And then a library over there. Why are we driving through the library?
Well, this would be like Doctor Strange library. Who
This is
knows
what
what the fuck's floating around?
This one came out really cool. Hiro Osono, I was telling you about, was the one who had like a lot of ancient trees and some just really cool the greens and the textures and the things that were coming out. This one I told it 1001 Dalmatians just to see what it would do with figuring they're all
That's where
pounds or
those
once a
came
month.
from. Yeah,
But that's where that all came from.
I totally see the Dalmatian.
Yeah. Yep. Hanging out in the middle. And then the ancient temples came out really cool. Because this is another one that ran for a long time. And if you watch the video on this, like you'll see it just shimmering back and forth for like the whole last half of the video as it's trying to zoom in on the tight details on these little curves and the kind of writing on the stones and stuff. All that stuff started building up over the last, 500 or 1,000 iterations or whatever.
That's an ancient city.
Yeah, this was ancient temples. I told it to. Because I was trying to do, this is one of the Japanese artists or one of the Oriental artists. So I was trying to go with something that would be, in that style and like the way the moss came in and the aged stone and all that. I was like, oh man, this looks cool.
And if you want to generate a picture where you have intricate textures like that with lots of detail in the small texture, knowing the right kind of artist style, that's gonna be the way you influence this to. Because I love when they make these little details like that. These are the pictures that impress me the most.
Exactly.
It's like
And
the
if you look
corals
And if you see where it came from, this was one of the earliest of that same series. So it's like this is where it was going from the blank page, trying to get to that set of temples. Like you can already see how it pulled out those details and just made that last image from here.
Oh, and being able to grab these by layers would be so awesome, especially as it's building them.
Mm-hmm. And even just seeing the transformation, because you can see like how kind of sketchy or how just general ideas there, but by the second one here, it was already getting pretty detailed. But you can see the lack of all the fine detail.
From 1 to 4 is night and day.
Mm-hmm. You can see how it doesn't have all the curvy little details here, or the big stones out front are even there. But they're narrowing in on the actual structure of the temple, which also has like more trees in the background, which is kind of cool. But when I was watching the video of this one, I'm not sure if I have it in here or not. I think it's in the other folder. But this is also another one that we did Ange. So we had the Ange with the... it came out two different ways, where it kind of like ripped her face apart and all that.
That's mini Ange.
Mini Ange. But then we also did a reef colony over here. And actually the two reef colony pictures are pretty different also. This is the further along ones. This is the more detailed. And you can see how they've got like little mini palm trees in there for some reason. And like the reef colony is actually above water, and then there's like the structures behind it and shit, which kind of bizarre the way it all went out. But where this came from,
and you see reflection and lighting implemented there.
Yeah.
Again, that was 3D elements.
This is where it came from. So it started with like the iridescent stuff in the back like that, and just some general elements in the front, and then it built everything from there. And it actually got a lot darker between this to the later versions of the file. But just the coloring, again, this is one of those where I could use these as seeds for styles for the other AI to feed it these, to use these color palettes and these depth and composition for the images.
See, now it'd be awesome if this could, if they had a standard layer format, like PSD. It's already been the standard in imaging layers. If you can take PSDs from that, incorporate those into the other AIs, then we're talking AI cross-collab development. Whoa. Stormtrooper.
It looked like a stormtrooper. Exactly.
And Darth Vader's on the left. Son of a bitch. Yep. That's a cool fucking Star Wars.
That's Batman.
Aztec.
Batman.
Oh, it could be Batman too.
Or Owlman. Owlman. It looks more like owl ears.
I see the Stormtrooper was the first thing that popped out.
Yeah, it jumped right out at you. And this is one that was also Ancient Temples, but by a different Oriental artist that we had in there, which is Hayao Miyazaki. Yeah. And that was, again, you can see how it went from this like super orange and green beginning image, and then it started getting less orange as it went forward, and then its final image is like much more teal. But this one was sword battled by
watching that one as it does develop, how it condenses the colors and turns things into the layers it does is amazing across all those renders.
Yeah. This one I really like the style. and the color with the moonlight and the way it's lighting things just a little bit. And it's a sword battle. You can see that there's definitely swords involved, but you can't really make anything too
It
much
looks like
out.
he's punching him. I punch you in the moonlight.
Yeah.
And look, the moon's smiling sideways.
Yeah, he is.
That
With his
that
tongue out
moon is
almost.
laughing.
Yeah.
I
That
punch
was
you in the chest.
Hayao Miyazaki. I also did Fritz Freeling. Did some ice skating, which was kind of cool, just in the style of Fritz. This one looks like he's wearing like fish on his feet for some reason.
Yeah, there's some squid skaters.
And I don't know what's up with this guy.
Yeah, some people are getting it on. In the back and in the front.
Yep, yep. Good old Fritz. And then Frazetta we talked about before with the barbarian feast and the wedding and the Spartan battle. Good
Right.
stuff.
And you see like the lighting and the painting style of the artist in just those little examples there.
Yep.
You see elements of his style.
This is also where I started kind of catching one of the first images that starts to be identifiable as the subject matter, where it's still very nebulous, it's still very just barely starting out. Then a second one where it's much more defined, and then a third one where it's at the final render. So I've got the before, middle, and end of the process. And some kind of, in
As
some cases,
that
the end
machine,
is much further on.
yeah, as that machine really is narrowing in on what about this style is the focus, the highlight, because they did that machine learned what Frazetta was by the end on the last Barbarian King wedding.
Mhm.
It got it down. I mean, granted, it accented colors and way more than Frazetta ever would, but
Right.
it did utilize his shadowing and his technique.
Mm-hmm. Pennington was a really good one. This is one, if you see like the wasteland kind of look. So I was looking for auroras over the Sahara for this one. You definitely get that feel. Some weird kind of towers, like wizard hat towers, but definitely cool aurora looking green stuff at the top and definite Sahara wasteland kind of deal at the bottom.
And a blown up Statue of Liberty on the right.
Yep.
Like, that's just her feet at this point, and a little bit of the dress.
Exactly. That's all that was left. And then Wasteland actually came
You
out looking
bastards!
pretty similar to that other one, but this was more like a Wild West ghost town with this enormous whatever it is in the middle. It's Wasteland, but you can see the texture of the paint too. If you're looking at it close, like you can see, it looks almost like you can see the brush strokes, which is really cool.
Yeah,
And the texture
I
of the
think
canvas.
I think in some cases they utilize canvas textures based on the artist that they're. If all the work it has are, in the old days, the painters use the texture as much as the color choice and everything else.
Yep. And as you said, if the reference images that it's looking at all have that, that graininess or that canvas texture essentially, then yeah, it would pick up on that as part of the style essentially.
Any artist that they're scanning, if that was part of the art, it's like the Starry Night picture and the painty swirls and the paint texture was actually as important as the rest of the picture, then yes, you want to scan that in and you want the AI to understand that that was part of the style. That's one thing we've lost with digital painting. Like, you can simulate some of that. Adobe does support textures in paintbrushes. So if you want it to look like paint on top of a canvas with the same kind of dynamics, you can simulate that in Photoshop with a good pen and the right brush. It can look like it was painted in the 1700s.
Yeah, this
and have a texture.
This is Las Vegas 2030. Glittering and neon everywhere.
It's cool how it did its color choices. The color choices fit.
It's like
that feels like
gemstones.
Vegas.
Yep. He had a good good experimental guitar too.
And think of the AI in that situation where it's trying to simulate like something like Las Vegas and colory, neons, and an art style and blend those.
Mm-hmm. Super Friends, I remember that one.
Oh, I really do see some Super Friends in there. And
Yep.
Silent Bob and Jay. Oh, wow. That really did turn into Silent Bob and Jay in the top left.
Yep, definitely. And I want to say like Wolverine legs in the middle here somewhere. For some reason.
Well, I see Wonder Woman off on
That's
the
almost
right there.
almost an Iron Man mask over here.
Mm.
And a big smiley face at the bottom. Very cool. We did some Van Gogh tulip fields. That was where that tulip field idea came from originally. Figured in his style it would look pretty cool.
See, here's where the texture and directional approach it plays into the artist style as much as the color choices and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Although, tell me it's not a yellow brick road; it's a brick road.
Yep.
Like that's a
Red brick
brick
road.
road, and I think I see some people walking down it.
Oh, this is that Pink Floyd album cover we were looking at one point. It reminds me a lot of Wish You Were Here, with like people with suits in the front, but then you got that snail eating an eggplant or whatever the hell that is back in the background.
Yeah, this is the one Ange saw George Bush Jr. like
Yeah, that's right.
island there in the middle.
She sure did.
And we couldn't tell if that was a snail eating an eggplant or not.
Exactly. But these were the ones that had the videos also, so these would be the ones that had the nature one, like showing up out of nowhere. Angel of Nature. And
Oh
it is
wow!
pretty subtle.
This
how they
is the
start coming
four.
out.
These are the
Four-in-one.
four interpretations.
Yep.
See, that's enough images right there to like write a 2-3 minute video and utilize 4 scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was the one for nature, and then we also did the desert one. Which, as you said, the one on the top right is really cool. It actually reminds me of he's carrying like a scythe, like a death reaper.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
it has the kind of detail that, especially with the contrast against the blue.
Yeah. Nope. And the one that was on the bottom right was cool too. That was all of those. So yeah, I mean, just a whole bunch of stuff. That was all stuff that we kind of went through some of that before. And some of it, like Ansel Adams, I got to add some more still. There were some that I just had in the main folder here. This was the one with the metal volcano. It looked kind of funny because it was supposed to be metal bands. Like it looked kind of like metal bands, but then it's like it's supposed to be playing in lava with fire around. And it's like that's not what it should
That
come
looks
out
like
but
that
got
looks
ZZ Top
like
on the
your
bottom for sure.
that looks like your late 80s, early 90s homemade music video.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely ZZ Top at the bottom. Their beards aren't that long yet, but they got the shades on. They got the hats on.
Well, if it was ZZ Top, there'd be some hot chicks running around in that lava.
Yep. With a classic Ford truck. Some of these were more with just the color stuff again. But yeah, it's like 2:30, so at this point, we probably should go ahead and shut down if we're still broadcasting. I'm sure we can show them more artwork and more music next time. This is one of the ones that rendered for a really long time, and I really love the fact that the one on the right looks kind of like a geode, and the one on the left is like a little nebula or something, but the words that came up again, this is one where there were no words anywhere, but it just kind of
made the
found
words?
something. Yeah. That's not English. That's not, I mean, it's
Well, I
like
see
foreign language,
Jamas.
Yeah.
Jamas.
and then down here's like Neftia or something, and it looks like almost a copyright symbol with a B instead of a C in it. I mean, there's some weird stuff, but with this one, it was Fantasy
wow.
Starscape.
All the text in this came from the AI, huh?
Yeah.
It picked up. What did you search for there?
All I said was Fantasy Starscape by I don't even remember who it was by.
Hmm.
Fantasy
So
Starscape was the main thing I fed into it, though.
so I bet you if you can match those signatures that you see there
Hmm.
to images that have the exact signature that you have there, you'll find where the AI was using images as a reference.
Hmm. And even on this metal one, I didn't even notice before, but it almost says like "yay" at the bottom. That's like a kind of like a WWE kind of a style lettering. Interesting. We had the angified ones.
Really want to look into that code and see how it works and how it, when it does retrieve from an AI library, how it utilizes that library, and if it grabs a chunk of an image, 64 pixels by 64 pixel square, and it happens to have some words in it.
Yeah, this was supposed to be Disney World, fireworks at Disney World in the style of Walt Disney. And so there's definitely chunks of what look like signs, like signs that you would see at Disney World, like sitting here, like pictures in the bottom left and in the bottom right, and in the top over here. You could see the fireworks clearly in the background, but then they also, by this iteration, they started looking like flutes or something, like bone flutes in the middle here.
Well, you
Something
can definitely tell the trademark like fucking Disney castle there in the top.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's where like the earlier like let's go back to, instead of the fifth one, you go to the second one, where it was just getting started really, and you can really clearly see like the the castle with the fireworks going on, real fireworks in the top there. You see the smoke off of these fireworks, but again, these all turned into something totally different by the end of the generation. So this is where sometimes it is good to cut it off a little bit earlier, so that you get closer to the beginning of the AI thought process rather than after it's gone down a road.
before it misinterprets.
Yep. Before it misinterpreted and went down
But
too far
that's
down the
why
wrong
I
road.
think being able to adjust it in real time and say, okay, in the right direction here, wrong direction there,
Yep.
shifting the AI as it's
Guardrails,
rendering.
little nudges this way, that way. Yep. And trying to stay on top of it for that
That's
whole time is the trick.
that's gonna really develop this stuff. All right, I got Angie's machine up here.
Cool, man. Yeah, let's kill the streams. We'll catch you guys next week, and we'll do more
We're
art
definitely
and more
gonna
music.
be seeing more of this stuff.
If you didn't kill it yet, we got the video finished rendering for the space station stuff that we started up earlier. Let's see what that looks like.
Oh wow, that's what it went into, dude.
Yep.
That shit looks like your video games.
Yep. Let's render that puppy up. And then let there be space stations.
That's the 4 views.
Yep, the 4 views, yep. 4 separate images being generated from the same keywords on a different randomization. Very cool.
Wow.
23 seconds. And then all you got to do is come over here.
I like the top left and the bottom right ones. Like I see a story in just those. That's 4 scenes in a space comic book right there.
Exactly. And they might have a slightly different style, but they're identifiable as belonging to the same theme, essentially, when I look at them.
And they're actually telling a story in themselves. It's like, we settled over here to start mining, and Square 2, we started mining until the shit hit the fan.
Yep.
Square 3.
This is where it would be all side by side. So like there's your Square 1, your Square 2. Like a much brighter in the second one and more ethereal. It's like you can see elements of the space station or the structure that is not as highlighted as it is in the other one. But in 3 you get that foreground
That could
stuff.
be one page in a comic book.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're about to get attacked. On Square 4, you start to see some floaty shit out there, like something got shot.
Yep. And that's where we go back to the space station or the asteroid mining colony disaster stuff that we were looking at before. But yeah, we can go ahead and kill that then. And we will continue next time around with more.
I like that. I like that for render approach like that.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. When I first saw it, it made total sense as far as before they were doing 512 by 512, and then here he was doing 256 by 256, but he was doing 4 of them, which would add up to the 512 by 512. So it was doing the same amount of rendering, but just
Well,
giving you 4 separate
conceptualizing.
images. Right.
If you don't really need the resolution and you just want a storyboard,
Mm-hmm.
you kill a lot more birds making 4 at a time there
Mm-hmm.
and getting different perspectives of the same scene.
Yep. And again, sometimes you'll get ones that are corrupted by either text that seems to have found its way in there, or ones where it just didn't come out exactly as you wanted it to. But with 4 at a time, you're actually you're bound to find one of the 4 at least that you really like.
You test the AI even harder by doing
Yep.
it 4 at a time,
Yep.
because you'll have to do it and get the failures and then say, oh, let's do it again the same way and see if it comes out the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it this way, you save time.
Yep. I'm still really happy with the way that bridge came out. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like the first couple of things was like, yeah, this is gonna look like shit, and then it's gonna shit, and then put the water in. I was like, ooh, there we go. Now we're talking. Couple of lines and a little lump of shit in the middle, and look what happened.
Be surprised what a turd does in the water.
give him some little googly eyes, and he's all set. Gaugan. Very cool.
Here we go.
So it's probably, 6 hours that we did tonight? Oh, looks like 5 hours and 18 minutes as far as BandLab is concerned, because the timer's still counting.
Get out of here. Yeah, I
Well-
just saw the BandLab pop up. That shit. Huh?
I mean, it shows that it stopped a while ago, but it does still show
Yeah,
the timer
same-
counting. So it's still receiving the stream, is my guess for that, even though the BandLab show cut. That's what that probably is.
Hmm.
Good deal.